I don't know what kind of person books a luxury event using their son's credit card, then forgets to invite him, but I guess I do now. Hi, my name's Jack. I'm 32, and this is the story of how my own parents made me realize just how expendable I was to them. If you told me last year that I'd be sitting here writing this, still numb, still stunned, I'd have laughed and called you paranoid. Because for most of my life, I genuinely thought my family loved me. I wasn't delusional. They weren't perfect, but no one is, right? We had our moments. Birthday calls, holiday dinners, group chats that died off and came back to life randomly. Nothing screamed dysfunction until it all unraveled in slow motion, one polite smile at a time. I'm the oldest of three. My sister Lacey is 29, charming, popular, a people person with that soft influencer voice and perfectly curated Instagram life. My younger brother, Drew, is 26, the baby of the family who still gets away with stuff like forgetting mom's birthday because he sent a late meme that made her laugh. I've always been the quiet one. The one who shows up, offers help, and keeps the peace. I run a digital marketing firm I started 5 years ago. It's small but successful. We work with a few luxury brands, and I've built some good relationships in the event planning and catering industries. That'll matter later. Growing up, I wasn't the golden child, but I was dependable. I didn't cause problems. Didn't get caught sneaking out. I kept my grades up, helped with chores, helped Lacey with college applications, even paid off a chunk of Drew's student loans when he couldn't make payments and didn't want our parents to know. That was 3 years ago. He never brought it up again, and I never asked. That's how things went in our family. I was the one they leaned on, but never looked at for too long. Not really. Not when Lacey's wedding needed planning. Not when Drew landed his dream job and needed connections I handed him on a silver platter. I was always background support. Present, but not spotlight worthy. Still, I never resented them. Not seriously. I assumed that's just how some families were. Not everyone gets a trophy or a thank you text. I was happy to help. I thought helping meant I mattered. That they saw me. Until the night my mom said, "There just wasn't room for you, you understand, right?" With that soft, almost apologetic smile. And the truth dropped like a lead weight in my chest. But we're not there yet. Let me rewind. It started with a text from my mom in early March. "Hey Jack, quick question. Could I run something by you? Dad's 60th is coming up, and we want it to be special smiling face with smiling eyes." I remember smiling when I read it. That was Mom's "I want a favor" tone. Always polite, always punctuated with emojis. I called her back that night. She launched right in. How this birthday had to be big. How Dad deserved a real celebration this time after the quiet COVID years. How she and Lacey had been brainstorming ideas and needed some professional help. I said sure. Of course. What do you need? Venue, catering, a cake, maybe a photo booth, she said. Something elegant, but fun. Not too stuffy. I asked for the guest list. She said they were still finalizing it. I offered to handle the booking and vendor outreach, suggested a couple high-end places I knew through my client connections. One of them, a rooftop event space downtown, was gorgeous. Expensive, but perfect. I'd helped plan a corporate gala there last fall. I could get a discount. Mom was thrilled. We went back and forth over the next 2 weeks. I coordinated with a private chef I knew, got a tasting lined up, even had one of my designers mock up an invitation template just for fun. Mom and Lacey ate it up, sent me Pinterest boards and color palettes, voice notes with seating ideas. I didn't mind. I like being useful. Every time I opened my inbox to another "Jack, can we do this?" I felt like I was part of something for once. Like they trusted me with something that mattered. Then came the cake. Lacey wanted one of those architectural-style tiered cakes, the kind you see on wedding blogs. But custom, she said. And with Dad's company logo on the side. Kind of funny but classy. I laughed, said I'd reach out to a boutique bakery I'd worked with. They were expensive. I offered to have it sponsored through my company. Technically, it fell under a promotional partnership we had for branded events. One email later, it was done. They'd make the cake. No charge to my family. Just a credit mention in the photos. I'll let Lacey know. She texted back. "Jack, you are amazing." Everything was moving fast. I put the deposit down for the venue using my business card, secured the catering schedule, and even helped schedule the live jazz trio Mom said would bring the vibe together. I never asked to be reimbursed. I assumed we'd settle that later. Or maybe they'd just thank me at the party. Maybe this was my way in. Maybe, finally, I'd feel like a real part of the family celebration. I didn't say it out loud, but I had a shirt picked out. A little dressy, with cufflinks I hadn't worn since Lacey's wedding. The day the invitations went out, I was on a client call when I saw my family group chat ping. A photo of the invite, captioned, "It's happening." Lacey had designed it. I smiled, enlarged the image, and read the names. Then read them again. And again. There was a list, not just of guests, but of special mentions. Family, friends, business partners. Drew's name was there. So was Lacey's husband. Even a couple cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. I scrolled. My name wasn't there. That had to be a mistake, right? I scrolled again. Nothing. I sent a quick text. "Hey, I didn't see my name on the invite. Was it just a mock-up?" No reply. An hour later, Mom called. Her voice was calm. Warm, even. "Jack, honey. I was going to call you about that." I laughed nervously. "About what?" "I'm not on the list." There was a pause. Then she sighed. "There just wasn't room for everyone, sweetie. You understand, right?" I waited for the punchline. For her to laugh and say, "Of course you're invited. Don't be silly." But it never came. There wasn't room? I repeated. "The space only allows 75, she said gently. "And we had to prioritize. Your father's work friends, the neighbors, your uncle, and his new fiancée. It added up fast." I swallowed. "But I helped plan it." "I know, sweetheart. You've been wonderful. Really, we couldn't have done it without you." I stared at the wall. My mind couldn't catch up to what I was hearing. "So I plan it. I pay for it. I get the cake. And I don't even get to be there." She clicked her tongue like I was being childish. "Don't be like that, Jack. It's not personal. It's logistics. You're so generous, and you'll still be part of it in spirit. Honestly, this wouldn't even be happening without you. And I know your father appreciates that." Something cold twisted in my stomach. I didn't even know what to say. I think I muttered something like, "Okay," then hung up before my voice cracked. I didn't sleep that night, or the night after. I stared at the ceiling, replaying every favor I'd ever done. Every time I'd stepped aside, let them shine, help behind the scenes, let them treat my efforts like background noise. And now they had the audacity to exclude me from a party I planned? I kept hearing her voice. "There just wasn't room for you, you understand, right?" She said it softly, almost smiling. I didn't understand, but I would. And so would they. Because if I wasn't invited to the party, then maybe the party wasn't going to happen at all. And all it took was one call and one password change. But I'll get to that. Not yet. First, you need to see how deep this hole went. Because the betrayal didn't end there. It got worse. Much worse. I wish I could say that was the last time I let something like that slide, but it wasn't. Not even close. After the invite incident, I thought maybe, just maybe, someone would reach out again. Maybe Lacey would call and say, "Mom told me what she said. That was messed up." Or Drew would shoot me a casual, "Yo, WTF man, you're not going?" text. But they didn't. The group chat went silent for a couple days, then picked back up like nothing happened. Memes. Updates on party prep. Selfies from the venue walkthrough Lacey did with Mom. Me? I was still in there, still seeing it all, but no one addressed the elephant in the room. No one cared that I wasn't on the guest list. I started to feel like I was watching someone else's family from behind a one-way mirror. The real punch came a few nights later when I called Dad. It was late, maybe 10 p.m., and I'd been pacing around my apartment, phone in hand, trying to decide if it was even worth bringing up. But I needed to hear it from him. I needed him to say it was a mistake, that it wasn't his idea. He answered on the third ring, his voice groggy. "Hey, sport. Everything okay?" I hesitated. "Can we talk for a minute?" Sure. "What's up?" I took a breath. "Did you know I'm not invited to your birthday?" Silence. Then he exhaled. "Jack, look, it wasn't my decision. But you're okay with it." Another pause. "It's just one night." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "It's your night. Don't make this into something it's not," he said quietly. "We just had to make a few hard choices, that's all." Hard choices. Like cutting out your eldest son. I felt my throat tighten. "Do you even want me there?" I asked. That silence again. The kind that confirms everything you were afraid to believe. Then he said, "Don't do this, Jack. You're being sensitive. I appreciate everything you've done. You've always been generous. But this isn't about you." I nodded slowly, even though he couldn't see me. "Right? It never is." I hung up before I said something I couldn't take back. Or maybe I didn't say enough. I don't even know anymore. After that, something inside me changed. It wasn't rage, not yet. It was something quieter, heavier, like a slow leak in a tire. Disappointment turning into disillusionment. It wasn't just that they didn't invite me. It's that no one seemed to think it mattered. The next week was a blur. I went through the motions at work, nodded through meetings, smiled through Zoom calls. All the while, I watched my family prepare for a party I had built from the ground up, without me. I checked in with the vendors, confirmed timelines, triple-checked dietary restrictions for the catering. Mom had given me a list, and I didn't say a word about what I was feeling. Not to them, not even to myself. Then came the gift request. Yeah, you read that right. It was Lacey. She called me up all bubbly, like nothing had happened. Hey, big brother. Quick thing, we were thinking of doing a group gift for Dad, like a surprise at the end of the night. Drew's pitching in $300. I'm doing $500. Think you could swing $1,000. I actually laughed. She paused. Wait, was that a yes or? I cut her off. You're asking me to fund a gift for a party I'm not invited to? Oh my God, don't be dramatic, she groaned. You are part of it. You helped make it happen, right? That's what matters. I didn't even get an invitation, Lacey. Jack, don't make this a thing, she said, suddenly annoyed. Mom already explained everything. You know how tight the guest list is. This isn't about feelings, it's logistics. That word again. Logistics. She kept talking, but I zoned out. I was staring at my laptop screen, open to the invoice for the venue deposit, $3,000 on my card. Non-refundable, unless canceled within the next 72 hours. That window was closing. Fast. Anyway, just let me know by Friday, okay? She chirped before hanging up. I sat there in silence, staring at that invoice. Then I opened my calendar. The party was in 6 days. And that's when the first crack formed in the dam. Not a full-on break. Just the first whisper of, what if you didn't let this slide? Still, I didn't act yet. Not until the favor came. 3 days before the party, Drew texted me. Yo bro, can I ask for a quick one? I didn't answer right away. He followed up. Need UR login for the vendor portal thing you use. Lacey wants to double-check the playlist for the jazz band. Mom forgot to tell you. Sray. I stared at the screen, dumbfounded. Not only were they excluding me, they were now bypassing me. Using me. Taking what I built and treating me like a glorified admin. I typed back slowly. You know I'm not invited, right? Read. No reply. A few hours later, Lacey called. What's going on with you? I'm busy, I said flatly. Well, Drew said you're being weird about the login. Can you just send it? We need to finalize the set list. You want my login for the platform I pay for? Oh my God, it's not that deep, she said laughing. You're being so touchy about this whole thing. You've always been kind of sensitive, but this is next level. Sensitive. That was the word that did it. That was the moment the dam didn't just crack, it shattered. I'd spent years bending over backwards for these people. Paid off loans. Booked venues. Got them out of last-minute disasters. Kept their secrets. Swallowed my pride. And now I was sensitive. Something in me snapped. Sure, I said calmly. I'll handle it. Thanks, she said breezily, clearly not catching the shift in my tone. Can you send it by tonight? You're a lifesaver. Click. I didn't send the login. I opened the dashboard. The venue. The catering. The bakery. The jazz trio. All of it, scheduled, confirmed, paid through my accounts or my company's promotional partners. Every last detail under my control. And suddenly, I remembered something. The cake. The massive, sculptural, centerpiece cake wasn't scheduled to be delivered until the morning of the party. And the venue had a strict rule. If payment or booking credentials weren't confirmed 48 hours in advance, they'd release the slot. It was designed to protect them from ghost clients. It was Wednesday night. The party was Saturday. 48 hours. That phrase echoed in my head. 48 hours. I sat very still, my laptop glowing in front of me. I opened a new tab, logged into the event vendor portal, clicked into my user settings. Change password. Yes. Are you sure? Yes. One call. That's all it would take. I had the event manager's direct number. I could cancel, reschedule, release the booking, but I didn't press it yet. Not yet. I needed to be sure. I needed to know this wasn't just petty payback. I needed to know if this was the moment I'd look back on and say, that's when everything changed. And then came the final straw. Thursday morning. A post on Facebook. Public. Tagged. From my mom. So grateful for my amazing daughter and son for planning such a perfect night for their dad's 60th. You two are the heart of this family. I can't wait to celebrate with all our favorite people. #family first, #blessed. She even tagged the bakery. And the venue. I wasn't mentioned. Not once. Not even a line about, thanks to Jack for helping behind the scenes. Nothing. I stared at that post for 10 full minutes. Then I picked up the phone. Called the venue. "Hi," I said. "This is Jack. My company booked the rooftop space for the Bennett event on Saturday. I need to cancel the reservation." "Of course. May I ask why?" "Change of plans," I said calmly. "Understood. Just a reminder, per our policy, that will release the date and the space will no longer be available." "I know. Would you like to transfer the booking to another client or event?" I paused. My heart was pounding. Then I smiled. "No," I said. "Let it go." And I hung up. I logged into the catering dashboard. Revoked the guest list access. Canceled the order. Same with the jazz band. Same with the bakery. I sent one polite email to the cake sponsor. "Event canceled. Please redirect promotional partnership elsewhere." And then I changed every password. I waited. And waited. Then, Friday afternoon, 24 hours before the party, my phone rang. It was Mom. I stared at the screen. Then I answered. And said nothing. Just listened. Because I already knew. The silence on her end was deafening. And I was ready for what came next. For the first few seconds, all I heard was breathing. My mother's soft, shaky inhale, like she was preparing a monologue. And me? I didn't say a word. I let her speak first. For once. "Jack." Her voice cracked slightly, like she was already crying. "What happened?" I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. I could hear the panic underneath her practiced calm. That little tremble that slipped through when her plans unraveled. "What happened?" I repeated. "You mean with the venue? The food? The cake?" "Yes." A pause. "I mean, yes, all of it. I just got off the phone with Lacey, and what do you mean everything's been canceled? The band said you pulled the plug. The venue is saying we don't have a reservation anymore. The bakery said they were told not to deliver the cake. What's going on?" "You told me I wasn't invited," I said flatly. She sputtered. "Jack, we talked about this. We explained. The list was tight. We couldn't fit everyone. But you could fit Uncle Ray and his girlfriend of the month. You could fit the neighbors from 2 houses down. You could fit Lacey's yoga instructor. Just not your son." She was quiet again. The silence stretched out so long I thought she might have hung up. Then she said, in a small voice, "This is a lot, Jack. You didn't have to go this far." I let out a humorless laugh. "Didn't I?" "You're being cruel," she said. "It's your father's birthday." "I planned your father's birthday," I snapped. "I paid for it. I got the venue. I got the catering. The entertainment. I even got the cake. All you had to do was include me. Not as a guest of honor. Not as the favorite. Just as someone who mattered." Another pause. Then came the part I'll never forget. "I didn't think it would matter that much to you," she said. Just like that. Like I was being unreasonable for caring. Like my place in their lives was optional. I didn't reply. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply ended the call. That was the moment I hit bottom. Not the earlier betrayal. Not the disinvitation. Not the public exclusion. It was hearing my own mother, someone I had bent over backwards for, tell me that she didn't think I would care. Like I was furniture. Reliable. Stationary. Unfeeling. The worst part? A piece of me had believed it too. For years. That night, I turned off my phone. Shut the blinds. Sat in the dark and just existed. No music. No emails. No distractions. Just silence. And in that silence, something unexpected happened. I started thinking, not about the betrayal, but about everything I had done. I thought about the first client I ever signed, 3 years ago. The sleepless nights. The 12-hour workdays. The deals I negotiated, the risks I took. The reputation I built. I thought about the way people respected me at work. Trusted me. Called me for advice. I thought about the bakery owner, who once told me I saved their business by landing them a corporate account during a slow season. About the jazz band leader who'd texted me after a successful gig, saying, "If you ever run for mayor, I'm voting for you." About my assistant, who once left a note on my desk that read, "Thanks for never raising your voice when things go wrong. You have no idea how rare that is." I realized something. I had built an entire world outside of them. A world where I mattered. A world where I wasn't too sensitive or too serious, or just Jack. I wasn't the background character in that world. I was the protagonist. It didn't erase the hurt, but it was the first time I started to feel something other than hollow. The next day, the day of the party that never happened, I drove out to the beach. It was about an hour outside the city. I didn't tell anyone. I brought a book and a hoodie and just sat on a bench, watching the waves. The air was cold, and the wind kicked up sand into my shoes. But for once, I didn't mind. I was unreachable, untethered. Around 3 p.m., I got a notification on my phone. Missed call from Lacey. Then another. Then Drew. Then Mom. I turned the phone off again. Let them sit in the silence for a change. The next week, I buried myself in work. Not to avoid things, but to focus. I looked at my calendar and cleared out every favor I'd been doing for family. No more free consultations. No more discounts. No more special treatment. I wasn't rude. I was professional. Detached. I started saying things like, I'd recommend checking with another agency, or this is out of scope for what we offer. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I booked a solo vacation. 10 days in Kyoto. No itinerary. Just me, my camera, and whatever came next. It was the first time I'd ever traveled without checking in with family. I didn't post about it. Didn't share updates. I just went. Walked the streets. Ate street food. Hiked to shrines. Took pictures I didn't plan to show anyone. Talked to strangers I'd never see again. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was trying to be someone for anyone else. On the flight back, I sat next to an older man, maybe late 60s, silver hair, kind eyes. He struck up a conversation about the in-flight meal, of all things, and we ended up talking the entire flight. At one point, he asked about my family. I told him a little, left out most of it, but he must have sensed something. He said, you know, sometimes the hardest thing isn't being alone. It's realizing you've been lonely for a long time, even surrounded by people. That line stuck with me, because he was right. I'd been lonely for a long time, but I wasn't alone anymore. When I got back, I did something else I never thought I'd do. I left the family group chat. No announcement. No drama. Just gone. Drew texted me once, yo, you good? But I never replied. Lacey sent a short, passive-aggressive message a week later. Hope your trip was fun. Just so you know, everyone was really disappointed the party didn't happen. Dad was crushed. Not that it matters. I didn't reply to that either. I wasn't being petty. I was drawing a line. And once I started doing that, the change was addictive. I started saying no to other people too. The friend who only called when he needed website help. The former client who wanted just a quick favor. The old college roommate who always forgot his wallet. I stopped being the guy who never complained, who always had time, who filled in the blanks. And slowly, I started filling in my own. I hired a second project manager for my firm. Finally got weekends off. Joined a photography club downtown. Went on a few awkward dates. One of them turned into something promising. Emma, a graphic designer with a dry sense of humor and a love for ugly vintage mugs. We started grabbing coffee every Sunday. It wasn't serious yet, but it felt possible, real. I also started therapy, something I'd always brushed off as unnecessary. Turns out, it wasn't. Turns out, there was a lot more to unpack than just the party. The therapist, Dr. Ronan, helped me trace patterns. Helped me understand how long I'd been playing the quietly useful son role. How I'd learned to measure love by usefulness. How I'd accepted scraps of affection and called it a feast. He said something one day that floored me. You're grieving, Jack. Not just a party. You're grieving the version of your family you thought you had. And he was right. I was grieving. But grief doesn't mean weakness. Sometimes it's the first step toward healing. Over the next 2 months, things got quiet. The kind of quiet I used to be afraid of. But this time, I leaned into it. I stopped checking their socials. Stopped hoping for a text. Stopped expecting an apology. Instead, I focused on living. And just when I thought they'd faded into the background for good, a letter arrived. Handwritten. From my father. No return address. No postage. Just dropped at my office, probably by hand. The envelope had one line written on it. From Dad. I held it for a long time. Turned it over in my hands. I hadn't heard from him since the call with Mom. Hadn't seen him. Had no idea where he stood in all of this. And now here was this letter. I stared at it for a long time. Then I opened it. And what I read changed everything. The letter was only 3 sentences long. No dramatic apology. No emotional outpouring. Just 3 precise lines, written in my father's stiff, all-caps handwriting, the kind you'd expect on blueprints or engineering diagrams. Not a personal note to your son. Jack, I don't know how we got here, but I know it's not where I want us to stay. When you're ready, I'd like to talk. Just you and me. Dad. I must have reread it 20 times. There was no blame in it, no defensiveness, no attempt to explain away what happened or ask for forgiveness. Just acknowledgement and an invitation. But I didn't respond. Not yet. Because while that letter cracked something open in me, it didn't erase what had been done. And it didn't account for the years that led up to this. Not just the party, but the pattern. A pattern where I was always the fixer, the helper, the one who didn't need a thank you because I understood. A pattern that had finally shattered when they planned an entire celebration around my father's legacy and somehow decided I didn't belong in the room. I wasn't ready to forgive, but I was ready for something else. I was ready to take control, not out of spite, not out of revenge for revenge's sake, but because something had shifted. For the first time, I realized I had more leverage than I'd ever used, more power than they had ever acknowledged. Not just financial power, though that was part of it, but informational power, social capital, professional reach. I wasn't just the guy who booked the venue. I was the guy who could get the venue, even when it was sold out. I was the reason Mom could brag about a cake shaped like Dad's sailboat. I was the reason Lacey's wedding DJ still recommended her to clients. I was the one who'd taught Drew how to negotiate his first raise. They had leaned on me for years, casually, thoughtlessly, often, but completely. And now that I'd stepped back, I could see just how many of their plans, appearances, and reputations had been propped up by favors I never tracked. So I started tracking. I made a list, not out of pettiness, but clarity. I wrote down every unpaid favor, every last-minute save, every vendor I'd introduced, every time I'd opened a door that wouldn't have existed without me. The bakery Lacey used for her wedding? My connection. The photographer who gave her a 50% discount because I vouched for her? That too. Drew's internship, which turned into his full-time job. I'd made 2 calls and coached him through the interview. Even the church my parents used for Easter events? I'd redesigned their website. For free. And still, I was the one left off the list. It wasn't just that I had been forgotten. It was that I had enabled it. And now I wasn't going to anymore. The first thing I did was reach out to people. Quietly. Calmly. I wasn't burning bridges. I was taking down signs with my name on them. I called Marla, the bakery owner. Hey Marla, just a heads up. I'm stepping away from referring clients for a while. Just letting you know so you're not surprised if Lacey or someone else reaches out and drops my name. She paused. Oh, did something happen? Just clarifying a few boundaries. Nothing personal. She was quiet a moment, then said, understood. But between you and me, she wasn't half as polite as you were. Didn't even send a thank you email. I smiled faintly. Thanks for letting me know. I made 6 more calls like that, each one the same. Brief, polite, just enough to draw a line. And each one ended the same way, with someone admitting that, yeah, my family had come calling more than once, usually assuming my name was still their access key. But the real setup didn't start until I saw the fundraiser. It popped up on my feed one afternoon in early May. Lacey had posted it. So excited to announce that I'm hosting a gala fundraiser for local women entrepreneurs. Flexed Biceps sparkles. This cause is close to my heart, and I can't wait to share more soon. Save the date, June 10th. Hashtag support small business, hashtag women's voices. I stared at the post for a full minute. Then I laughed. Because the venue she tagged? That was my client. One I'd helped get off the ground during the pandemic. I knew the owner personally. In fact, she still owed me a favor for helping with their relaunch campaign. I didn't need to sabotage the event. I just needed to know the truth. I called the owner, Tessa. Hey Jack. Long time. You coming by soon? Actually, I had a quick question, I said. I saw Lacey Bennett's post. Something about a June fundraiser? Tessa hesitated. Yeah, I've been meaning to talk to you about that. She said she was referred by you. I closed my eyes for a second. Did she mention I'm not involved? She didn't mention much of anything. Tessa said carefully. Just dropped your name and said the space was already familiar. I exhaled slowly. Mind if I stop by next week? I'd like to talk through a few things. Of course. Always. When I got there, she greeted me with a hug and a slightly worried look. I didn't want to assume anything, she said as we sat down. But it did feel off. She's using my name without permission, I said. And I'd prefer not to be affiliated with anything she does moving forward. Tessa nodded. Say no more. And if she's planning to fundraise under the business sponsorship rules, we'll verify paperwork. I leaned in slightly. Actually, If she's raising money in a business name, she needs to show formal registration. Publicly. Otherwise, she's operating under false pretenses. Tessa blinked. You think she doesn't have it? I know she doesn't, I said. She's been using a lifestyle blog and some branded merch to make it look official. But there's no LLC, no filing, no tax ID, just vibes and hashtags. Tessa nodded slowly. You want me to pull the reservation? Not yet, I said. Let her keep building, announcing, promoting. She smiled knowingly. Got it. The thing was, I didn't need her fundraiser to fail. I just needed her to understand what it felt like to be removed from something you built. But I didn't stop there. 2 days later, Drew called me out of nowhere. Hey bro, weird favor. Are you still in touch with that guy at VenturePoint? The VC group? Possibly, I said. Why? He hesitated. My startup's doing a second round of funding. We're trying to get in front of bigger names. I mentioned you, and someone said you've worked with VP before. I had. I also knew the guy who handled early-stage pitches, because I'd helped him design his firm's rebranding campaign last year. Sure, I said. Send me your deck. He emailed it 10 minutes later. I didn't forward it. Instead, I opened it. Read it. Spotted 2 things I recognized. A section of the deck had been pulled almost word for word from a template I'd sent him a year ago, when he asked for just a bit of help putting together a pitch outline. Another section featured analytics from a campaign I'd run. He hadn't even reworded the captions, just lifted the screenshots. I didn't confront him. I simply reached out to the contact at VenturePoint. Hey, just a heads up, Drew Bennett might reach out. If he does, could you loop me in? I helped develop some of the assets he's using and want to make sure the credit is clear. 2 hours later, I got a reply. Thanks for flagging. That's a problem. We don't take kindly to attribution issues. I didn't hear from Drew again. At least not until the email came. Subject, can we talk? From Drew Bennett. To Jack Bennett. Hey man, not sure what's going on, but I just got a rejection from VenturePoint and the guy said something about intellectual property red flags. If I did something wrong, just tell me. I'm trying to make this work. Please don't blacklist me, okay? I didn't reply. Not out of cruelty. Out of strategy. Let the silence teach them what I never could with words. Because silence was the only thing they listened to when I spoke. But I wasn't done yet. There was one more piece to move. And it came from the letter my dad sent. The only gesture that almost made me pause. The invitation. The olive branch. I hadn't answered yet. But now I was ready. Not to reconnect. Not to forgive. But to reveal what I had built in their absence. To show them what they had chosen to cut out. To make them see. Because the next thing I was about to do would make every missed invitation look like a blessing in disguise. And it all started with one small announcement. Something I hadn't told anyone yet. My company had just closed its biggest deal to date. A 7-figure partnership with a global brand. The kind of deal that made headlines. And the press release? It would go live in exactly 4 days. But I had one more thing to add to it. Something personal. Something impossible to ignore. The press release hit the wire at 10 a.m. on a Monday morning. The headline was clean, powerful, and impossible to ignore. Bennett & Company secures $4.3 million global partnership with Kellen Bradley. Underneath it, a quote from me, founder and CEO of Bennett & Company, about integrity, innovation, and how our next chapter would focus on brand strategy for rising entrepreneurs and overlooked creators. A subtle nod for anyone paying attention. And at the bottom of the article, nestled beneath a bulleted list of upcoming initiatives, was the real kicker. Founder Jack Bennett to launch the Bennett Catalyst Fund, an annual grant for young entrepreneurs with integrity, vision, and grit. Applications open July 1st. The fund had been in the works for months. I'd been putting aside a portion of our profits to do something that mattered. Something that wasn't about favors or family ties, just merit. No nepotism. No backdoors. The press release went live. And within 2 hours, it started making rounds. Industry newsletters, LinkedIn reposts, startup Twitter. My inbox filled with messages of congratulations. Clients I hadn't spoken to in a year reached out. Even an old mentor forwarded the article with a note. You did it, kid. Proud of you. Then came the text from my family. Lacey was first. Lacey, wait what? You started a fund? Why didn't you tell anyone? I thought we were going to co-host something this summer. A minute later, another one. Lacey, also, are you seriously not making an exception for family? Drew was going to apply. I didn't reply. Then came Drew. Drew, congrats I guess. Didn't know you were out here making headlines and launching funds lol. Maybe we could talk sometime. I've got some stuff I'm working on. Could use your eyes on it. Still no reply. I let the silence speak. The real reaction came from my mother. She didn't text. She called and left a voicemail I'll never delete. Her voice was tight, controlled, but with a hint of panic underneath. Jack, I just saw the article. This is quite a surprise. Everyone's talking about it. Your aunt forwarded it to the group thread. We didn't know anything about this. Why wouldn't you tell us? It would have meant so much to your father. To all of us. Please call me back when you get this. She never said congratulations. Just why didn't you tell us? That voicemail told me everything I needed to know. They weren't proud. They were blindsided. Because for once, they weren't part of the story. They couldn't claim it. They couldn't twist it. They couldn't use it. And it killed them. But I wasn't finished. 3 days after the press release, I sent one last email. It was short, simple, polite. To Tessa, venue owner. Subject, regarding Lacey Bennett's gala. Hi Tessa. Following up on our conversation, I've attached documentation confirming that Ms. Bennett is not formally registered to collect funds on behalf of a nonprofit, business entity, or verified 501(c) organization. While I won't instruct you how to proceed, I did want to clarify that I am not, in any capacity, affiliated with or endorsing this event, and I have not authorized the use of my name or connections for promotional purposes. Warm regards, Jack. Less than 12 hours later, the event was canceled. Tessa sent me a quick reply. Handled. Thanks for the heads up. We'll be vetting future events more thoroughly. Lacey posted a vague Instagram story the next day. Due to unforeseen complications, we've made the difficult decision to postpone the gala. Thank you to everyone who supported us. No further explanation. But her story views plummeted that week. I know because a mutual friend sent me screenshots. Sponsors quietly pulled out. Collaborators backed away. Then came the part that even I didn't expect. VenturePoint, the firm Drew had tried to pitch, launched a new initiative. A podcast featuring young founders. In their first episode, the host talked about the dangers of borrowed success and the importance of original vision. He didn't name names. But he didn't have to. People talk in these circles. The ripples reached my family faster than I thought. And then, after weeks of silence, my father finally showed up. In person. At my office. He didn't announce it. Just walked in one afternoon while I was finishing a meeting. My assistant looked uncomfortable as she motioned toward the lobby. He says he's your dad. I stood up slowly, walked out to the reception area, and there he was. Wearing the same brown jacket he'd worn for years. Looking tired. Older than I remembered. He held his hat in his hands like he didn't know what to do with them. Jack. I crossed my arms. What do you want? I just wanted to see you, he said. And say congratulations. I read the article. You've built something incredible. Thanks. He shifted his weight. Your mom's been a mess. I said nothing. He looked around. This place is, wow. I didn't know. I guess I should have. But I didn't. I raised an eyebrow. Didn't know what. That you weren't just the guy who helped. That you weren't just. He stopped himself. You built all of this. And we treated you like a spare part. Still, I said nothing. He looked down. The party. I should have said something. I should have stood up. You didn't, I said quietly. I know, he replied. And I think I knew, even then, that we were crossing a line. But it's hard to stop momentum once it's moving. Your mom had her plans. Lacey was in her element. And I told myself, Jack won't mind. Jack never minds. I met his eyes. I minded. He nodded slowly. I see that now. The silence stretched between us again, like it always did. Only this time, I didn't feel the need to fill it. He cleared his throat. I guess I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for not seeing you sooner. It wasn't much, but it was honest. I nodded once. Thanks. He gave me a weak smile. If you ever want to come by for dinner, I'll make sure there's a seat. I'll think about it. He turned to leave. Stopped at the door. You know, they still don't get it. Your mother, Lacey, even Drew. They think you're just mad. But I know better. Do you? You're not angry, he said. You're done. And he walked out. That night, I sat on my balcony, glass of whiskey in hand, and let the weight of it all settle in my chest. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt free. I'd spent years chasing validation from people who saw me as convenient. Now, finally, they saw me for what I was. Not their fixer. Not their safety net. Not their shadow. But the man who built everything they took for granted. And when I closed my eyes, the silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt earned. Because I hadn't just walked away. I'd walked forward. And they were the ones left behind. I'm Josh, 28, and up until about a week ago, I lived with my dad and older brother, Ben, in the same two-story house I grew up in. Not because I'm lazy, or a freeloader, or whatever other label they like to throw around, but because 3 years ago, when Mom passed, I didn't have the heart to leave my dad alone. And Ben? Well, Ben swooped in to help, which mostly meant moving back in after his second divorce, taking over my old bedroom, and letting me be the one who handled everything. Meals, bills, the yard, the hospital visits. Everything. But when people talk about being taken for granted, I don't think they picture it being this calculated. It wasn't neglect, it was dismissal. Casual cruelty wrapped in dry sarcasm and brotherly jokes that hit just a little too hard. Dad would watch us argue and say nothing. Sometimes he'd smirk, like he was proud of Ben for keeping me in check. It all came to a head on a Thursday night, over chicken and rice. I had just gotten home from a 12-hour shift, inventory deadlines, budget audits, the kind of day where your spine feels like rubber and your head buzzes like a wasp nest. I walked in to find the kitchen a mess, food left out, sink piled high, and Ben on the couch, feet up, laughing at something on his phone. My dad was in his usual chair by the window, newspaper open but unread. I didn't even say anything at first. I just started washing the dishes. Steam rising, hands in the water, scrub, rinse, stack, over and over. Then Ben called from the living room, not looking up. You're clanging those plates like a drama queen. I froze. Not because of what he says worse, but because of how easily it rolled off his tongue. How normal it was. Like I was a character in a play he didn't even like. I took a breath, turned off the water, and said, maybe if you cleaned up after yourself once in a while. And that was it. Ben snapped, here we go. You always find something. Always complaining. You only bring drama. I turned to Dad. I wasn't even looking for backup. Just a glance. A raised eyebrow. Some acknowledgement. But he just set down his paper and said, without even blinking, maybe we'd have peace if you just left. That moment, it wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. No plate smashed. No shouting match. Just silence. Heavy. Final. I nodded. Not out of agreement, but because something inside me just clicked off. Like a switch I didn't know existed. I walked upstairs. Packed a duffel. Laptop, charger, toiletries, 2 changes of clothes. I didn't leave a note. I didn't say goodbye. I just grabbed my keys, walked out the back door, and drove. Where did I go? To an old co-worker's Airbnb. He'd offered it to me once for a weekend getaway. Said it was barely used. I Venmo'd him 2 weeks rent up front. Cash. No questions. Just needed somewhere they wouldn't think to look. I turned off my location sharing. Disabled Find My iPhone. Blocked their numbers, just in case. And for 3 days, I slept. I mean actually slept. No creaking floorboards at 2 a.m. No arguments over thermostat settings. No passive-aggressive knocks when I locked the bathroom door. Just silence. By day 4, I unblocked their numbers. Not because I wanted to talk, but because I wanted to know what came next. And sure enough, the messages trickled in. First from Ben, where are you? Then from Dad, grow up and stop sulking. Then silence again. Until this morning. I woke up around 9 a.m., blinking against the light streaming through unfamiliar curtains, when I noticed my phone buzzing on the nightstand. 17 missed calls. Most from Dad. A couple from Ben. One from a number I didn't recognize. No voicemails, but one text from Ben stood out. Call me. It's serious. I was staring at it, trying to decide whether to delete it or laugh, when I heard it. A knock. Not the gentle kind either. 3 heavy thuds. Then a pause. Then 3 more. I stayed frozen on the edge of the bed, heart racing. Who even knew I was here? Then another knock. Followed by a voice I didn't expect to hear again so soon. Josh? I know you're in there. It was Dad. And somehow he sounded out of breath. Maybe even nervous. But I didn't move. Didn't speak. I just sat there, staring at the door, waiting to hear what he'd say next. He knocked again, lighter this time. Then a shuffle, like he shifted his weight or maybe glanced around to make sure no one was watching. Josh, he said, voice muffled through the door. Look, I know things got out of hand. We didn't mean. He stopped. Exhaled sharply. Just open the door, all right? We need to talk. I didn't move. My hand hovered over my phone, but I didn't touch it. The stillness of the room pressed in on me, like even the furniture was holding its breath. I waited, listening. No more knocking. Just silence. Then footsteps, slow and heavy, fading down the hallway outside. I stood up and walked to the door, not to open it, but to look through the peephole. There he was, my dad, standing in the courtyard like he didn't know what to do with himself. He glanced back at the door, then reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something, his phone. I watched him type something, then put it away and leave. A second later, my phone buzzed. A text. Just come home. Please. No punctuation. No apology. Just that one sentence that told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't here because he missed me. He was here because something went wrong. I didn't reply. Instead, I made coffee and sat at the tiny kitchen table with my laptop. I still had work responsibilities to deal with, emails piling up, reports to review, but I couldn't focus. My brain kept circling the same questions. What had changed? Why the sudden panic? Why today? By noon, the answer started revealing itself in pieces. First was a call from my boss. Not unusual. He likes quick check-ins. But this time, his voice was clipped. Hesitant. Hey, Josh, everything all right on your end? I got a weird email from someone claiming to be your father. I sat up straighter. What kind of email? He hesitated. He said you were in some kind of crisis, that you'd left the family under distress. He asked if we could freeze your direct deposit until you come home safely. I blinked. What? My boss continued. Don't worry. HR flagged it. We didn't take any action. But I thought you should know. I thanked him, hung up, and just stared at the wall. So that's what this was. Not regret. Not love. Not even concern. It was damage control. Dad had tried to cut off my money. Probably assumed I didn't have backup savings, or forgot I had a second bank account he didn't know about. He thought if he pressed the right buttons, I'd crawl back home. But he was wrong. So wrong. I hadn't said a word when they leaned on me for help. When I covered Dad's car repairs, or Ben's credit card debt, or paid off the back taxes no one wanted to admit they owed. I just did it. Quietly. Because I thought family meant showing up, no matter how thankless it felt. But this? Trying to control me with my own income? That crossed a line I didn't even know I had. By mid-afternoon, it got worse. I got a text from an unknown number. A screenshot. It was a Facebook post from Ben's account. Some people love to play the victim and make everyone else out to be the villain. Maybe if they didn't treat every conversation like a personal attack, we'd still be a family. Below it, comments from relatives started stacking up. Josh always was the sensitive one. Can't believe he just vanished. After all Dad did for him. That one made me laugh. Like they knew what Dad actually did or didn't do. I closed the post and just sat there. My blood wasn't boiling. My hands weren't shaking. I felt something worse. Numb. Tired. Like I was watching a movie I'd already seen 10 times and knew exactly how it ended. But I wasn't going to play my part this time. So I did something petty. Simple. Quiet. I logged into my cloud drive. The one where I kept backups of every receipt, every transfer, every bank statement showing how many bills I'd covered for Dad and Ben over the last 4 years. Every mortgage top-off. Every car note. Every Venmo to help until next payday. I'd saved it all, not out of paranoia, but because that's how I am. I don't forget. I compressed the files into a folder. Labeled it, Josh, the family parasite, just to amuse myself. Then I attached it in a new email. I stared at the to field. Typed in one name. Aunt Sylvia. She was the only one in the family who ever seemed to see through their charm. The one who warned me at Mom's funeral, watch your back. Your brother's got a smile full of lies. I clicked send. Then I set my phone on silent. That night, I didn't sleep much. I lay in bed, watching the city lights flicker on the ceiling, wondering how long it would take before the fallout reached them. I didn't have to wonder long, because the next morning, they showed up again. But this time, it wasn't just Dad. It was Ben, and he wasn't knocking. He was pounding. The pounding was sharp and erratic, fists slamming against the door like he was trying to break through sheer will alone. I jolted upright, blanket tangled around my legs, heart immediately racing. I didn't need to look through the peephole. I recognized that rhythm. Ben never did anything subtly. His footsteps stomped like accusations, his knocks demanded attention, and his voice. Yeah, here it came. Josh, he bellowed. Open the damn door. I know you're in there. I didn't answer. I didn't move. I just sat on the edge of the bed, letting the noise settle around me like fog. He was pacing now. I could hear his boots scraping against the cement outside the unit, the occasional huff of breath like he was talking to himself, trying to work up the courage to try again. "You think this is funny?" he shouted. "You sent that stuff to Aunt Sylvia? Are you serious? You're really trying to make us look bad now." Look bad. That was it. That was all it ever was for Ben. Not the truth. Not what they'd done. Just the appearance of it. The illusion cracking. His mask slipping. He couldn't stand being seen as the problem. That was always my role, the moody one. The difficult one. The one they could blame when anything went wrong. He'd made an art form out of twisting every situation so that he came out looking clean, calm, just trying to help. I stood up slowly, still silent, and walked to the door. I didn't open it. Just stood behind it. I could practically feel the heat radiating off him through the wood. "Dad's freaking out," he continued. "You know what you've done? He's getting calls from everyone. Aunt Sil, Uncle Rick. Even Grandpa asked what was going on. You humiliated him." A flicker of something stirred in me at that. Humiliation. That's what he was mad about. Not the truth. Not the years of gaslighting. Not the emotional trench I'd crawled through to keep things afloat. Just that someone finally noticed. Someone talked. I finally spoke, my voice low and calm. I didn't lie. He paused, then scoffed. "You think that makes it better? You're airing our dirty laundry? That's betrayal, Josh." I clenched my jaw. No. Betrayal is using someone for years, treating them like garbage, and then trying to shut down their bank account when they finally walk away. There was a beat of silence. Then his tone shifted, less rage, more smug. "You really think you're so important, huh? You think the family's gonna just take your side? That anyone's gonna care?" I didn't answer. He knocked again, softer this time. "Just come outside, man. Let's talk." I backed away from the door and sat down on the edge of the couch, phone in hand, still not replying. I knew his game. Wear me down, play reasonable, twist the narrative. He'd done it too many times. The knocking stopped. I heard retreating footsteps. A car door slamming shut. An engine starting. But this wasn't over. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Aunt Sylvia. "Honey, I just got off the phone with your dad. He's furious. Says you're having a breakdown. That you've been unstable for months." I told him if that were true, you wouldn't have organized his insurance payments, fixed the leak in his attic, or managed Ben's tax mess. I don't believe a word he's saying. Just checking in, are you okay? I stared at that message for a long time. That one paragraph did more for me than any conversation with my father ever had. I typed back, "I'm safe, and I'm done playing their game. Thank you for believing me." She replied instantly, "Always. Let me know if you need a lawyer, by the way, or if they keep harassing you. I have names." The rest of the day passed in a daze. I didn't check social media, didn't respond to more texts, but I could feel the chaos spinning behind the scenes. Relatives whispering, messages flying back and forth. The cracks in the foundation I'd spent years holding together were finally showing, and I wasn't the one falling through. By sunset, I got a final message that made me set my phone down and just stare at the wall in disbelief. It was from my father. "Josh, enough is enough. You're being cruel. You've embarrassed this family. If you come back tonight and apologize, we'll forget this happened. But if you don't expect to be welcomed back again." Welcome back? That was rich. Welcome back to what? The house where I was treated like furniture? The dynamic where Ben's messes were my fault? The reality where my pain was a punchline? I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my laptop again, and this time, I pulled up the shared document I'd been slowly piecing together over the last year. It wasn't just receipts anymore. It was a full log, dated entries, quotes, conversations I remembered word for word. A private history of every manipulation, every jab disguised as a joke, every time they'd gaslit me into believing I was the problem. I hadn't known what I was saving it for. Until now. This wasn't about revenge anymore. Not really. It was about finally seeing it. Laying it bare. Owning the truth that I'd been forced to swallow for years. I wasn't dramatic. I wasn't selfish. I wasn't unstable. I was just done. I was done being the scapegoat for a family that fed on silence. And then, just as I was about to shut the laptop, another knock came. But it wasn't at my door. It was at the window. A shadow moved across the glass. Not pounding. Not yelling. Just standing there. Watching. And my heart froze. Because I knew that silhouette. It wasn't Dad. It wasn't Ben. It was someone else entirely. Someone I hadn't spoken to in almost 4 years. And suddenly, Everything I thought I understood about what was going on began to unravel. It took me a few seconds to fully register the face outside my window. The shadow leaned closer under the amber glow of the porch light, and a chill went through me that had nothing to do with the evening air conditioning. It was my cousin, Caleb. The last time I saw Caleb, it was at Mom's funeral. He'd hugged me tightly, whispered, "You don't deserve this," and then disappeared back into the city with the rest of our so-called extended family. We hadn't spoken since. He wasn't the type to keep up with birthday texts or family updates, but in that silence, he'd become one of the few people I actually respected. Because he never played into the family's lies. He didn't pretend. He saw everything for what it was and walked away. And now here he was, on my doorstep, like a ghost from a part of me I hadn't fully processed. I walked to the window and slowly raised the blind. He didn't smile, just lifted a hand in a small wave, like he was testing if I'd still acknowledge him. I opened the door a crack, my voice tight with confusion. "What are you doing here?" He let out a breath, relieved. "Hey man, can I come in? Just for a second." I hesitated, then opened the door wider. Caleb stepped in, looking older, more tired than I remembered. Slightly disheveled in that way that said he'd driven without stopping, his bag still slung over one shoulder, hoodie wrinkled, eyes rimmed with fatigue. "I heard what happened," he said, gently. "Sylvia called me. Said things blew up." I raised an eyebrow. "And you drove 4 hours for that?" He gave a dry smile. "She told me where you were. Said you might need someone who actually gets it." I sat down on the couch. Caleb dropped his bag by the door and followed, his tone quieter now. "Look, I'm not here to tell you what to do or how to fix it. I know you're not looking for that. I needed to see you with my own eyes. Because I've been where you are, Josh. I know what it's like when the people you love most convince you you're the villain in your own story." I said nothing. He continued, voice soft but steady. "My dad used to say I was too sensitive. Every time I spoke up, he'd twist it until it sounded like I was overreacting. Gaslighting, manipulation, emotional blackmail. It wasn't just occasional. It was the family dynamic. And no one else saw it. Until I left. And even then, they said I abandoned them." He met my eyes. "But you didn't abandon anyone, Josh. You escaped. And you were brave enough to do it without burning the house down behind you." That nearly undid me. My throat tightened, and I swallowed the lump that had been sitting there all day. Caleb leaned forward. "I saw Ben's post. The comments. The stuff your dad's been saying. They're scared now. You understand that, right? They lost control. You were the glue, the banker, the caretaker, the emotional punching bag. And when you stopped playing your role, they panicked. Then why do I still feel like I did something wrong?" I asked quietly, like I left them to drown. Caleb smiled sadly. "Because you're still healing. You spent years being conditioned to equate your existence with utility. So now, when you stop being useful, you feel like you're being cruel. But that's not love, Josh. That's programming." I didn't realize I was crying until I felt it on my hand. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something folded, a letter. "Before I left the family for good," he said, "I wrote this to myself. A reminder. Something to read every time I felt like caving. I want you to have it." I opened it slowly. Just 3 lines. "You are not their servant. You are not their scapegoat. You are not broken." We sat in silence for a while after that. He didn't ask for details. Didn't pry. Just let me sit with it. And that was exactly what I needed. When Caleb finally stood up to leave, he gripped my shoulder. "Whatever you decide to do next, whether you go no contact or try to rebuild on your terms, do it because you choose it, not because you're guilted into it." I nodded. "Thank you. Seriously." He smiled. "Hey, I brought you donuts. I know you stress-eat powdered sugar." He left them on the counter, then walked out without another word. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. The sky was still pale, and the world hadn't started buzzing yet. I made coffee, stood at the window, and looked out at the city with a kind of clarity I hadn't felt in years. I opened my laptop and wrote an email to my father. Not an apology, not a cry for reconciliation, just the truth. Subject: family. "Dad, you told me I only bring drama, that your life would be more peaceful without me. So I gave you exactly what you asked for. But let me be clear, I am not your villain. For years, I paid your bills, managed your paperwork, cleaned up after Ben, and swallowed every insult you both threw at me. I stayed when others would have run. I stayed because I thought love meant loyalty, no matter how painful it got. But I realize now that staying wasn't love. It was survival. You don't get to rewrite the story now that I've stopped bleeding for you. You don't get to call it betrayal when I finally chose myself. If you're embarrassed, that's not my fault. That's your reflection in the mirror. I won't be coming back. I won't be silenced. I won't keep your secrets to protect your pride. I hope one day you look around that quiet house and realize peace doesn't come from pushing people away. It comes from treating them like they matter. Goodbye, Josh. I didn't wait for a reply. Instead, I packed my things, locked the Airbnb behind me, and moved into the small apartment I'd put a deposit on a week earlier. I hadn't told anyone yet, not even Caleb. But I'd been planning this in the back of my mind for months, even before that dinner where everything boiled over. And you know what? The silence felt different here. It wasn't heavy. It wasn't tense. It was freeing. No footsteps stomping upstairs. No accusations waiting around every corner. Just me, a desk, a bed, a view, and peace. It took a few more days before the ripple effect stopped. Aunt Sylvia texted me updates. Ben had deleted his Facebook post. Dad hadn't returned anyone's calls. Some of the cousins had messaged her, confused. A few took sides. A few didn't. But I didn't care anymore. I wasn't looking for validation. I'd already found something better. Clarity. The next weekend, Caleb came back. We built a small bookshelf, ordered Thai food, and watched a movie like we used to when we were kids. No drama. No manipulation. Just connection. And as the credits rolled, he nudged me and said, "You know, starting over doesn't mean you failed. It just means you finally chose the right chapter." And for the first time in years, I believed it. So no, I didn't go back. I didn't unblock their numbers. I didn't make peace by letting them off the hook. But I did find peace on my own terms. And I never looked back. My name's Eli. I'm 29. And I guess you could say I've always been the stable one in the family. The reliable one. The one who doesn't cause drama, who sends birthday cards on time, who picks up when someone calls at 2 a.m. It's a role I didn't exactly volunteer for, but I learned pretty early on that if I didn't hold the line, no one would. My parents, nice enough on the outside, have always had this uncanny ability to decide things for me, usually under the guise of family unity or what's best for everyone. My younger sister, Cassie, on the other hand, was the whirlwind. The kind of person who could fail 3 college courses, borrow money from everyone in the family, and still get a standing ovation for showing up to dinner with new hair. That's not bitterness talking. It's just how things have always been. The real turning point started at what should have been an ordinary family brunch. You know the kind, bland eggs, too many mimosas, and the same 5 stories that get recycled like clockwork. We were all crammed around the patio table at my parents' place. Me, Cassie, our mom and dad, and Aunt Lila, who never says much but always seems to know everything. I had barely touched my plate when Mom said, with her usual cheery tone, "We're just so relieved Cassie will be staying with Eli for a while. It'll give her some breathing room to get back on her feet." My fork paused halfway to my mouth. Cassie chimed in like it was old news. "Yeah, I'll just take the spare room. I figure I can start moving my stuff next weekend." There wasn't a question mark at the end of her voice, not really. Just the kind of entitled assumption I'd heard my whole life. No one had asked me. Not once. They just said it like I wasn't even sitting there. "Right?" Dad added, like some kind of punctuation. "She needs a fresh start, and it's not like you use that space for anything important. Besides, family sticks together." I just nodded slowly, chewing a dry piece of toast, trying not to let my face betray anything. My heart was pounding, not in anger, but in that quiet, heavy way that tells you a line just got crossed. I didn't say a word. I just let them keep talking. They were so confident, so comfortable assuming my time, my space, my life, that they didn't even pause to check if I was on board. They didn't notice that I didn't confirm it. They didn't ask when I'd be home. They didn't even look at me. Cassie was already pulling up Pinterest boards for how she'd decorate the room. What they didn't know was that I'd moved out of that apartment 3 weeks earlier. Not on a whim, either. I'd been planning it for months. The lease had ended, and I took the chance to grab a smaller place across town, closer to work, with more light, no roommates, no baggage. And I never told my parents. Part of me just wanted something for me. A space that was mine alone, that didn't come with the weight of expectation or family deals. I still had the old lease in my name for another week since I paid through the month, but I hadn't stepped foot in there since I carried out the last box. Sitting there, listening to them carve up my life like it was a pie they were entitled to split, I realized something. They genuinely believed they had the right to decide where my boundaries were. They thought my silence was agreement. They thought they could just assign me responsibilities like a side character in their story. I remember excusing myself from brunch early, saying I had errands to run. Mom barely looked up. Cassie waved absently, already texting. I walked to my car in a daze, sat in the driver's seat for a few long minutes, and let the stillness settle around me. No music, no calls, just breathing. That quiet clarity that only shows up when something inside you snaps, not in rage, but in resolve. That week, I didn't reach out. I didn't remind anyone that I didn't live there anymore. I didn't correct them when Mom texted me a grocery list for Cassie's arrival or when Dad sent a thumbs-up emoji in response to some article about teaching responsibility to adult children. I didn't say anything when Cassie asked if she could bring over a cat, just for a few weeks. I just watched it unfold. Every message was a reminder that they weren't asking. They were informing. And that made what came next feel inevitable. The day she was supposed to move in, a Saturday, I drove by the old apartment around noon, just to see. The street was crowded. Cassie's little white car was double parked, its trunk open, boxes stacked on the sidewalk. She stood there holding a plastic container of what looked like makeup or jewelry, her phone pressed to her ear. I didn't stop. I didn't wave. I didn't even slow down. I just kept driving. The scene burned into my mind. Later, I checked the security camera feed from the building's shared entrance. Yes, I still had login access. The motion sensor had picked her up, ringing the buzzer. Again. And again. She knocked. She paced. She sat on her suitcase. She called, first me, then Mom, then probably half the family. I didn't answer. I turned my phone off and went out for coffee. That evening, I checked again. The boxes were gone. So was Cassie. The last footage was of her being picked up by someone. Maybe a friend. Maybe Dad. I didn't care. I just sat there, sipping my drink, and for the first time in a long while, I felt something that wasn't guilt. It wasn't satisfaction, either. It was quiet. Like I'd finally stepped out of a role I didn't audition for. But that wasn't the end. By Monday, my inbox was flooded. Missed calls, voicemails, texts that started off passive-aggressive and quickly became just plain aggressive. Mom texted, "Eli, this isn't funny. Cassie is extremely upset and confused. You need to call me back." Dad texted, "You made your sister wait in the cold? You better have a good explanation." Cassie texted, "What is wrong with you? I stood outside for an hour like a fool. You couldn't even send a text? What kind of brother does that?" I didn't reply. Not yet. I was still sitting with it, this strange, quiet storm that had been building inside me for years. It wasn't just about Cassie or the spare room. It was about every time they had made a decision with my name attached to it, like I was some resource they could allocate. Babysitting duties, loan cosigns, family errands, emergency help, and me, always the good soldier. That week at work, I was unusually calm, productive, even. Like I had finally unplugged from a current that had been draining me dry. But every day, the messages kept coming, some demanding, others manipulative. Tuesday, Mom left a voicemail in tears. "I just don't understand why you're doing this. Cassie needed you. You know how hard things have been for her lately." Wednesday, Cassie sent a screenshot of her trying to book a hotel. "Guess I'll just spend the rent money on this then, since some people can't be bothered to answer their phones." Thursday, a long message from Dad, the kind that pretends to be calm but drips with judgment. "You've always been the responsible one. That's why we trusted you with this. Honestly, I expected more from you." That last one hit harder than I wanted it to. Not because it hurt, but because it confirmed what I already knew. To them, I wasn't a person. I was a utility, a dependable cog in the family machine. So I did what any responsible one would do. I started documenting everything. Every text, every voicemail, every dollar I had spent in the last 2 years helping out with family stuff, covering Cassie's overdraft fees, helping Mom and Dad with car repairs, chipping in for groceries until payday. I made a spreadsheet, line by line. It was exhausting and cathartic, because for the first time, I was treating their chaos like a problem to be solved. That Friday, I sent an email. One single, polite, impossibly formal email. I CC'd Mom, Dad, and Cassie. The subject line? Cassie's living situation. The body of the email read, "Hello, just to clarify, I moved out of the previous apartment on April 3rd. The lease officially ends on April 30th, but I have no belongings there and no intention of returning. It is not my legal residence, and I am not responsible for guests attempting to access it. In the past 2 years, I've contributed financially to various family matters. For full transparency, I've included a breakdown of those contributions below. Please review at your convenience. Going forward, I will no longer be able to assist with unplanned housing arrangements or emergency funding. I recommend coordinating these matters with more advance notice. Best, Eli. And I attached the spreadsheet. The silence that followed was glorious. No calls that night. No texts the next day. Not even a passive-aggressive meme from Aunt Lila. It was like I had finally spoken a language that didn't understand boundaries. Not anger. Not sarcasm. Just clear, unemotional facts. But then came Sunday. That morning, I went to the grocery store like I always do. Same route, same little corner cafe for a cinnamon roll on the way back. My phone buzzed halfway through the line. Cassie. Again. I muted it. Then it buzzed again, Mom. Then again, Dad. I stepped outside and finally opened the group message. A photo of my old apartment. Cassie was standing in front of it again. This time, she wasn't alone. Mom was there too, arms crossed. And Dad, looking annoyed, like he had something better to do. Below the photo, Cassie had written, "We're here. Open the door." My heart actually skipped. They were there. Again. Except this time, they didn't think I was avoiding them. They thought I was inside. 5 minutes later, another photo came in. A box on the ground, labeled toiletries. Then a message, "We'll wait." That's when I realized they were going to sit there. All afternoon if they had to. Maybe even longer. So I got in my car. I didn't head toward them. I didn't call. I drove to a quiet parking lot 2 blocks away, turned off the engine, and sat. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I was deciding whether or not to say anything at all. The next hour changed everything. And it started when I saw my dad walking back toward the street, without Cassie or Mom, and picking up his phone. From the distance of my parked car, I watched Dad pace along the sidewalk, phone to his ear, his other hand gesturing in those short, sharp chops he always used when he was frustrated but pretending not to be. I rolled the window down just slightly, just enough to hear the murmur of his voice drifting through the spring breeze. I couldn't make out the words, but I could tell from his posture that this wasn't a calm check-in. This was the beginning of damage control. After a minute, he turned around and started walking back toward the building. Cassie was still there, sitting on one of the boxes, legs crossed, phone in her lap, I scanning the sidewalk like she was expecting some divine intervention to descend from the sky. Mom stood stiffly beside her, arms folded so tight it looked like she was hugging herself. No one spoke. I wondered how long they had been like that, waiting, assuming I'd eventually appear to save the day like I always had. But I didn't move. I just sat there, parked behind a row of hedges, a few buildings down, watching the family dynamic unfold from the outside, literally and metaphorically. And it hit me how theatrical it all was. 3 grown adults staging a sit-in outside an apartment that didn't belong to any of us anymore, demanding I show up to make their problem go away. Around 2 p.m., a neighbor must have come out. I saw her from my angle, a woman in gym clothes walking her dog, pausing at the sight of the impromptu sidewalk standoff. She and my mom exchanged a few words. Cassie stood up quickly, trying to look composed. My dad, ever the gentleman when someone else was watching, even extended a hand toward the dog, trying to smile. The neighbor didn't linger. She just nodded and walked on. But 30 seconds later, Cassie was texting again. "Everyone here thinks we're crazy. Just let us in already." And then, "You're being cruel, Eli. Seriously. Who does this to their family?" I stared at the screen for a while, then opened a note on my phone. Not to reply, just to jot something down. A thought that hit me so clearly, I didn't want to lose it. They don't think you're a person. They think you're a service they forgot to tip. I sat with that for a while. Then, I opened my banking app, scrolled through the last dozen charges, and took note of the remaining auto payments still quietly draining from my account on their behalf. Subscriptions Cassie had asked me to temporarily cover. The shared Netflix tied to my email. The grocery card linked to Mom's number. The insurance payment Dad swore he'd reimburse me for in February. It wasn't about the money. It was about the pattern. The quiet entitlement. The way they painted themselves as the injured party the second I didn't fall in line. At 3:13 p.m., Cassie called again. I let it ring once before silencing it. Then another text buzzed in. "You're gonna regret this." That one stuck with me. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't in all caps. It didn't come with 20 angry emojis. But something about the way she phrased it, not "You're hurting me, but you're going to regret this," spoke volumes. It wasn't about being abandoned. It was about losing access to a room, a buffer, a backup plan. They weren't there because they missed me. They were there because I'd stopped being useful. I watched them for another 20 minutes before I saw Dad open the trunk of the car. One by one, the boxes went back in. Cassie didn't help. She stood on the sidewalk, arms dangling at her sides, face locked in a grimace that would have looked like heartbreak to anyone who didn't know better. Mom finally broke first, getting into the front seat without a word. Dad followed. Cassie lingered the longest, sending one final glance toward the building before she, too, climbed in. The car sat there for a full minute before pulling away. I didn't move. Not yet. When I finally drove home, my home, the new one, the one no one had ever visited, I walked in with the strange feeling of having watched my old life from the outside. The door closed with a soft click behind me, and I stood there in the silence. The air smelled like basil from the little plant I kept on the windowsill. The light spilled onto the hardwood floor. No boxes. No drama. No sister in the spare room. But the messages didn't stop. By Monday, I was getting texts from extended family. Aunt Lila, Uncle Brian, even a cousin I hadn't spoken to in over a year. Each one some variation of, "Can we talk?" or "Just want to understand what's going on." Cassie had clearly gone on a PR tour, telling her version of the story, the cold-hearted brother who tricked his poor sister into homelessness. And then came the message that changed everything. From my mother. "If you don't fix this, you're going to split the whole family in two. I hope you're proud." I stared at that message for a long time. Not let's talk. Not even an ounce of curiosity about why I'd gone silent. Just an accusation, straight from the Queen herself, dropped like a gavel. And the thing that stung wasn't the message, it was the realization that she actually believed it. She really thought the weight of the entire family's unity rested on me bending again. On me making it all go away. Just like always. That night, I didn't sleep much. I lay awake thinking about all the times I'd fixed things over the years, helping Cassie get out of that bad sublease when she bailed on rent halfway through the year. Wiring Mom and Dad money when their car insurance lapsed and they forgot. Driving 3 hours in a snowstorm to fix the busted heater in their cabin after they rented it out and didn't warn the guests. All the little things, the "can you just" favors that added up to years of rearranging my life around everyone else's comfort. I thought about how no one ever asked if I needed help. By the time morning came, I was done. Not angry, not emotional, just done. I got up, made coffee, and opened my laptop. I drafted one last message. No drama, no insults, just facts. I sent it to my parents, Cassie, and the few relatives who had texted to get my side of things. It read, "Hi everyone, I've taken some time to think about everything that's happened in the last few weeks. I want to clarify a few things and set expectations moving forward. I moved out of my old apartment in early April. No one consulted me about having Cassie move in. I was informed after the decision had already been made, and when I didn't comply, I was met with silence, guilt, and eventually public shaming. What happened at the apartment, Cassie showing up with boxes and being locked out, was not a prank. It was not punishment. It was the result of a family that has grown too comfortable treating me as a backup plan. Over the past 2 years alone, I have financially contributed in various ways that total over $9,000. I've never asked for repayment. I've never held it over anyone's head. But from this point forward, I am stepping back. This means I will not be covering any more family expenses. I will not be hosting, housing, or financially supporting Cassie. I will not be the emergency contact for issues I had no say in creating. This is not done in anger. This is done out of self-respect. I'm 29. I deserve a life of my own. You're welcome to reach out if you'd like to have an honest conversation, not a guilt trip, not a lecture, but a real dialogue. Otherwise, I wish you well. Eli. I turned off my phone after hitting send. And for the first time in a long, long while, I didn't feel the weight of my family pressing down on me. I didn't worry about how they'd spin it. I didn't even brace for the fallout. I just made breakfast. I watered my basil plant. I cleaned the apartment while listening to music, full volume, no interruptions. That week, the silence was deafening. No replies. No angry follow-ups. No apologies. Just nothing. It took 5 days before someone cracked. It was Aunt Lila. She sent a text that just said, "Saw your message. Proud of you. If they want a martyr, they can build a statue." I laughed harder than I expected to. Then I cried. Just a little. Eventually, the responses did come in. Mom sent a long email, full of vague sentimentality and no accountability. She talked about how family goes through hard times and how I had always been the strong one. I didn't reply. Dad called and left a voicemail that started with, "I just don't get what you're trying to prove," and ended with, "This isn't how we raised you." I deleted it. Cassie went quiet, surprisingly. No texts, no subtweets. Just silence. And that said more than any tantrum would have. Weeks passed. I started sleeping better. Eating better. I went out with friends without that tightness in my chest, waiting for the next favor to derail my weekend. I stopped checking my phone every 10 minutes like it was a time bomb. Then one day, something strange happened. I got a letter in the mail. A real one. Handwritten. From Cassie. It was short. Just a few lines. "Eli, you made your point." Loud and clear. I didn't see it before, but I do now. I used you. We all did. I think I wanted a soft landing more than I wanted to grow up. That's not your fault. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I just wanted to say, I get it. And I'm sorry. Cassie. I sat with the letter for a long time. I didn't frame it. I didn't post it anywhere. I didn't even reply. But I didn't throw it out either. Because maybe, just maybe, something had shifted. Months have passed now. I see my parents less. I've stayed no contact with Cassie since the letter. Not out of spite, just space. The kind of space I never realized I was allowed to claim. Last week, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was the leasing office at my old building. Apparently, someone had tried to use my name as a reference to rent a unit. They flagged it because the application looked suspicious. I asked who the applicant was. They told me it was Cassie. I paused for a second, then told them the truth. That's my sister. I wouldn't recommend using my name. And I hung up. That night, I made dinner. I played some jazz. I lit a candle and cracked open a new book. The apartment was quiet, still, mine. And for the first time in my adult life, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. Because it already had. And I had stepped out of the way. My name is Mason, and I'm 32 years old. I don't really talk to my family much these days. Not because I don't care, but because every time I've tried, it ends with them making me feel like the villain in a movie I didn't even audition for. Growing up, I was the fixer. The golden kid. The one they called when the car broke down or the rent was late or someone needed help moving an entire apartment on 2 days' notice. But that all changed 5 years ago. After Dad passed, I distanced myself. Not from grief, though that hit hard, but from what came after, the inheritance war. It tore through us like a fire. My mom and her brother, Uncle Ray, tried to manipulate everything Dad left behind. They figured I'd roll over like always. I didn't. And ever since, I've been the black sheep. I still don't know why I agreed to come back for Thanksgiving this year. Maybe part of me hoped something had changed. Maybe I was lonely. Or maybe I just wanted to see for myself if the bridges I left burning were really just piles of ash now. Mom called me 2 weeks before. Said it was going to be a real family gathering this time. Her words. She emphasized that a few times, almost like it was a warning. I should have listened. I hesitated, but said yes. Told her I'd bring dessert. I picked up a pecan pie from that bakery on 8th Avenue they all used to rave about. Spent too much money on it, honestly, but I figured if I was going to walk into the lion's den, I might as well show up with something sweet. The moment I walked into my childhood home, I felt it. That thick tension in the air. Like I had stepped into a play and everyone had memorized the script except me. My cousin Lily gave me a side hug. That was about the warmest welcome I got. My mom barely looked up from the kitchen. Uncle Ray was already seated at the head of the table like he owned the place. He greeted me with a smug grin that didn't reach his eyes. Well, look what the wind dragged in. Classic Ray. I didn't even respond. Just set the pie down and took off my coat. Dinner started tense. No one made space for me at the main table, even though there were still 2 empty seats. I hovered awkwardly, pretending to check my phone until someone, I think it was my younger cousin, finally brought over a folding chair from the garage. I sat at the very corner of the table, barely able to reach the mashed potatoes. Every few minutes, I caught whispers, not even subtle ones, about people who think they're too good for family, and how some people just disappear until there's food on the table. I chewed slowly, trying to ignore it, reminding myself I'd survived worse. But then Uncle Ray cleared his throat, holding his wine glass like a royal scepter. "You know," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "not everyone here deserves a seat at this table." The room went still, except for the clink of someone's fork hitting their plate. I glanced up. He was looking directly at me. Some people only come around when they think there's something in it for them. I didn't say anything. I just kept eating. It wasn't worth it. I knew what this was, a trap. But my mom chuckled softly. That's what stung. Real family doesn't abandon us when we need them, she added, her eyes on the turkey, like she couldn't even look at me. It was like the air got knocked out of my lungs. I sat there for a beat, trying to stay calm. I looked around the table, at the people I used to share birthdays and holidays with, and all I saw were people who had already decided I didn't belong. I stood up slowly, picked up my coat. No one tried to stop me. In fact, a few seemed relieved. I didn't say a word, just smiled, nodded once, and walked out the front door. The cold air outside was a slap in the face, but honestly, it felt better than anything inside that house. I sat in my car for a long time, just breathing, watching the lights in the windows flicker as the dinner continued without me. And then, I started thinking, not about the insults or the silence, but about the safe. Dad's old safe. The one hidden behind the painting in the study. The one they never figured out how to open after he passed. The one they assumed was just filled with meaningless papers. That safe used to be mine. I helped Dad install it when I was a teenager. I knew the code. I hadn't touched it since the funeral, out of respect. But tonight, something shifted. I wasn't angry. Not exactly. I just felt done. Done being the punching bag. Done being the afterthought. Done watching people twist memories into weapons. And most of all, done letting them profit off the parts of Dad they didn't even try to understand. I drove around for a bit, grabbed a coffee, let the night settle. Then, maybe an hour later, I turned the car around. The house was still buzzing when I got back. I parked down the street, slipped in through the back fence like I used to as a kid. The garage was locked, but I still remembered the loose panel by the side entrance. It took less than 5 minutes to get inside. The study was empty. Voices floated in from the dining room. Laughter, clinking glasses. Someone, maybe Lily, was playing piano badly. I moved quietly, carefully. My hands didn't shake when I lifted the painting off the wall. The code clicked on the first try. And when I opened that safe, I didn't find just papers. There was money, bonds, a few small boxes, Dad's old pocket watch, the deed to the lake house, copies of the trust, a few letters addressed to me, unopened. I took it all, not in a rush, not in a panic, just with quiet, deliberate motion, like I was finally picking up what had always been mine. When I left, I locked the door behind me. Nobody saw me. Nobody knew. By the time they sat down for dessert, I was already halfway across town. And the safe they thought no one could open? It was empty. I didn't go home right away. I ended up at this little overlook outside the city, where you can see all the lights glittering below. I parked, turned off the engine, and just sat there with the boxes in the passenger seat beside me. The letter on top had my name written in Dad's handwriting. I didn't open it immediately. I don't know why. Maybe I was scared of what it might say. Maybe I was still holding on to that last thread of childhood hope, the kind that says, if I read this, something in me will change. But I did open it, eventually. It was short, only a few lines. Mason, if you're reading this, it means you came back. I never doubted you would. You were always the only one who paid attention. The only one who saw people as they were, not as they pretended to be. Everything in this safe belongs to you. I put it here because I knew the others would fight over what they could see. But I trust you to know what to do with what matters. Dad, that was the first time I cried that night. I sat with the letter in my lap, watching my breath fog up the windshield. And for once, the tears weren't because of what my family did. They were for what my dad still somehow managed to do, even years after he was gone. I didn't hear from anyone until the next morning. It started with a text from my cousin Lily. Hey, were you at the house last night? Then from my mom. Mason, call me. Now. And finally, Uncle Ray, always the charmer. What did you do? I ignored them all. Around noon, Lily tried calling. I let it ring. She texted again after. The safe was emptied. There was stuff in there we didn't even know about. They're freaking out. That made me laugh. They didn't know about it, sure, because they never bothered to ask. They just waited for the pieces to fall into their laps. That's all they ever did. By 3 p.m., I got another call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't pick up, but something made me curious. Hello. I answered cautiously. Mason. It was my mom's voice, but it didn't sound angry. Just tired. Please. We need to talk. I don't think we do. I said flatly. There are things you took. Things that were mine, I cut in. Or do you want to read the letter out loud together? There was silence on the other end. Then she sighed. Mason, your uncle is talking about lawyers. I'm sure he is. Tell him I kept a copy of the will, too. It's in the box. Why would you do this? She asked. Not yelling, not crying. Just this empty question, like she still didn't get it. And that's when something in me cracked, but not the way she expected. I didn't yell back. I didn't argue. I just said what I should have said years ago. Because I'm done being the quiet one. The fixer. The invisible backbone of this family. Dad knew it. You didn't. That's not on me. You're being cruel, she whispered. I almost laughed again. No. I was cruel when I let you treat me like a stranger in my own home and said nothing. Last night. That was clarity. I hung up. And for the next week, it was chaos on their end. I didn't even need to check in to know. My cousin started posting cryptic quotes on Instagram about betrayal and fake people. Uncle Ray apparently tried hiring a locksmith to break into the safe again, just to see if I had really taken everything. My mom sent me a long email, 3 paragraphs of guilt, followed by one line that made me pause. Come home and we can talk. Your room is still here. I didn't reply. Instead, I called the lawyer Dad had worked with, the one whose business card was tucked inside one of the folders from the safe. We set up a meeting. I brought the trust papers, the deed, the letters, everything. He remembered me, said Dad had mentioned me often and always with pride. We went through the documents together. Legally, it was airtight. The safe was Dad's. Its contents were not listed in the general will. They were set aside as part of a private trust with one beneficiary, me. Everything I took, everything I now owned, it was mine, fully and legally. That included the lake house. And that's when the idea started forming in my head. It was subtle at first, just a passing thought, like a whisper. But the more I sat with it, the more I realized I wasn't done. Not yet. They tried to cut me out of the family for walking away. Now they wanted me back because I had something they needed. But what they didn't understand, what they never understood, was that I didn't want back in. I wanted them to know exactly what they lost. So I made a plan. The lake house had been sitting empty for years. Mom and Uncle Ray used to joke that it was too far out of the way and not worth the upkeep. But Dad and I used to spend summers there, fixing it up, making plans. He'd once told me, half seriously, that it would make a perfect retirement spot or getaway. Now, I had other plans for it. I called in some favors, hired a contractor, a landscaping team, even a drone photographer. I put the lake house on a luxury short-term rental platform with a fully redone listing and photos. Within 2 weeks, it was booked solid for the next 6 months, high season. And then, once the income started rolling in, I sent one thing to my family's group chat. Just a screenshot. It showed the first month's earnings, $18,392. No caption, no message, just numbers. They didn't reply right away, but I saw the read receipts. One by one. First Lily, then Mom, then Ray. That was 3 days ago. I haven't heard a word since. But I know the silence won't last. And when the next message finally comes, I'll be ready. The silence from the group chat stretched longer than I expected. A full day passed. Then another. I knew them well enough to understand what that meant. Panic behind closed doors, hushed phone calls, probably a family meeting without me. Like old times. They were scrambling, trying to figure out what to do now that I wasn't just quietly removed from the picture, but thriving outside of it. I spent those days in peace. First time in a long while. I drove up to the lake house myself, just to see it before the renters moved in. Pulled into the driveway and stared at the porch Dad and I rebuilt together, plank by plank. The railing I helped him install was still solid. The pine tree we planted in the backyard had grown taller than the roof. Inside, everything was fresh. New floors, updated appliances, a working fireplace. But the soul of it was still there. The memories clung to the walls like invisible photographs. I stood in the living room for a while, remembering Dad's laugh, the way he used to sit by the window with coffee in hand, looking out at the water like it held answers. It felt right, like I'd finally reclaimed something no one else even saw the value in. That night, while sipping tea on the deck, I got a text from Lily. You really rented it out? Like fully. I stared at the message, debated whether to reply. Eventually, I just sent back. Yep. First booking already paid. Rest are scheduled through spring. She replied within a minute. Mom's losing it. Ray too. They said they didn't know about the deed, that you manipulated something. But I saw the papers. It's all yours, right? That caught me off guard. Lily was never really against me, just silent, passive, a bystander. I hesitated, then replied, "It's mine. Dad left it to me. He trusted me to take care of it." She didn't reply after that. Not right away. The next evening, I was halfway through dinner when the doorbell rang. I live in a small place just outside the city, and no one drops by unannounced, so my stomach immediately sank. I checked the peephole. It was my mom. Hair done up, coat neatly pressed, eyes sharp as ever. I opened the door slowly. "Didn't expect you. I figured you wouldn't answer my calls," she said. She walked in like she still owned the place. Didn't wait for an invitation. Typical. She glanced around with that expression she always wore, judgment dressed as concern. "You're living here?" "Yes," I said, shutting the door behind her. "I like it." "You could have come home," she muttered, touching the edge of my bookshelf. "We had a place for you." I crossed my arms. "You mean at the corner of the table, with the folding chair?" She turned. Her face tightened. "That wasn't supposed to be about you." "Then who was it about?" I asked quietly, because it sure felt like a message. There was a long pause. She opened her mouth, closed it again, then sat on the edge of the couch like it pained her. "Your uncle says you emptied the safe, took things that belonged to the family." I stayed silent. "Your father wouldn't have wanted this kind of division," she added. "That was rich. Mom. He literally wrote me a letter. Said it all belonged to me." She looked away. "He always favored you. He trusted me." I corrected. "And maybe he saw what I refused to see back then." She flinched at that, then sighed. "You don't understand how hard it's been. Keeping the family together. Ray's finances aren't great, and that's not my problem anymore," I said, cutting her off. "You made that clear. Over and over." Her voice sharpened. "You're being cruel again, Mason." I leaned against the wall. "No, I'm being honest. There's a difference." Another pause. Her eyes darted around the room like she was looking for something. Maybe an angle, maybe a weakness. Finally, she pulled out a small envelope from her purse. "This was in the bottom drawer of your dad's old desk. I found it after you left. It's addressed to you." My breath caught. She handed it to me. I took it slowly, cautiously, like it might vanish if I wasn't careful. She stood, straightened her coat. "Read it. Maybe then you'll understand." And with that, she walked out, shutting the door behind her without another word. I stood in silence for a long time. Then I sat at my desk and opened the envelope. It was another letter. This one, shorter than the first. Written in a different tone, a bit firmer, more direct. "Mason, if this letter finds you after all the noise, know this. You don't owe anyone forgiveness unless they've earned it. Protect what matters. Don't let guilt wear your spine down. If you feel alone, remember, I trusted you with the truth. That house is more than timber and nails. It's your foundation now. Build from it. Proud of you, always. Dad." I sat there in the quiet for a long time, letter in hand, eyes stinging. And for the first time in years, I felt grounded. Not angry, not lost, just clear. But that clarity didn't last long. Because the very next morning, I got a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. It was Uncle Ray. His voice was calm. Too calm. "Hey, Mason. We need to talk. There's something about your dad's trust we didn't know. Something I think you'll want to see. Let's not make this ugly. Give me a call." And just like that, the game had changed. I didn't call Uncle Ray back. Not right away. His message felt too rehearsed, too polished, like he'd practiced it in front of the mirror until he found the exact tone between concern and veiled threat. I listened to it twice. Then I forwarded it to my lawyer. I wasn't playing this game blind. Not anymore. I spent that afternoon at a nearby cafe, going over everything in my head. The safe, the trust, the lake house, the letter. Ray's voice kept echoing. "We need to talk. Let's not make this ugly." That last part stuck with me. Let's not make this ugly. Like we were still playing nice. Like it hadn't been ugly for years. When I finally left the cafe, I had 3 missed calls. 2 from Ray. 1 from Lily. The message from Lily was short. "They're talking about suing. Ray says there's a clause in the trust that might help them." I texted her back. "There isn't. I checked. He says your dad altered the documents a year before he passed away. There's another version. He says it names the family." Another version? I didn't like the sound of that. I called my lawyer again. We arranged to meet first thing in the morning. And then I drove back to the lake house. Not because I was scared, but because if they were planning something, I wanted to make sure my place was locked down. Literally. It was a quiet drive, and the house looked just like I'd left it, glowing softly in the golden light. The air smelled like pine and distant rain. I stepped inside and walked through every room, checking the locks, the windows, the basement door. Everything was fine, until I reached the study. On the floor near the fireplace was a boot print. Fresh, tracked in from outside. But the strange thing? It wasn't mine, and I hadn't had guests. No contractor appointments. The cleaners had finished 2 days ago. I checked the doors again. Nothing was broken, but someone had been inside. I called a locksmith that night. Told him I needed every lock replaced, including the sliding glass doors, the garage, and the shed out back. I wasn't taking chances. Not now. The next morning, my lawyer, Greg, sat across from me in his office, reading the voicemail transcript Ray had left. When he finished, he looked up with a frown. "They're bluffing." "You sure?" "I'm certain," he said. "We filed the updated trust with the county clerk. There's no earlier version that holds weight. If there was a revision, your father would have had to sign it, notarize it, and register it. No such document exists." I exhaled. "So Ray's just fishing." Greg leaned back. "We're trying to rattle you. If they thought you'd back down, maybe they hoped fear would do the trick. It didn't." That weekend, I hosted my first guests at the lake house, a retired couple from New York. They messaged me after check-in, saying the place was like something out of a movie. I thanked them. Watched their review come in a few days later, 5 stars. My inbox lit up with more booking requests. I forwarded the earnings update to the family group chat. Another screenshot. $42,186. No caption. Just silence again. Until the doorbell rang. This time, it wasn't my mom. It was Ray. He stood on my front step like a man who hadn't been told no in years. Dressed sharp, leather briefcase in hand. Like this was a negotiation. "Mind if I come in?" he asked. I didn't answer. Just stared at him. He sighed. "Look, I know things have been tense. But we're family. There's no need for lawyers and hostility." "Then why are you here with a briefcase?" His lips twitched. "To be honest, I want to propose a compromise." I raised an eyebrow. He continued. "We were thinking, the lake house brings in a lot of income. It's a family asset, Mason. You don't have to carry the burden alone. We could share it. Split it 3 ways. Or even 4. I stared at him, stunned. "You think you deserve a share of this?" He didn't blink. "Your father always said family comes first. He wouldn't want this division." I laughed once, bitter. He trusted me. You all laughed at that. Mocked me at the table. Called me a stranger. And now that it's profitable, suddenly I'm family again. "You're being emotional," he snapped. "This is about what's right." "No," I said. "This is about what's profitable." His expression hardened. "I'm giving you an option here. A fair one. You're young. Managing this on your own is risky. We can help." "You mean take a cut?" He didn't deny it. I stepped outside, forcing him back a step. "Ray, I'm going to say this once. You and Mom and everyone else made it clear I wasn't part of your circle anymore. You threw me out without a word. And now you want in. We can make this messy, Mason," he said quietly. "We can drag this out in court. You may win, but it'll cost you." I smiled. "Then let's dance." I closed the door in his face. 2 weeks later, I got a formal letter from his attorney, a petition to freeze the lake house's earnings until ownership could be clarified. My lawyer responded within the hour, attaching the trust documents, registration proofs, letters from my father, and the notarized beneficiary list. Their petition was rejected in 3 days. But it didn't stop there. They tried going after me in other ways, claimed I had taken sentimental family heirlooms from the safe, tried painting me as manipulative. Lily posted a vague status about some people stealing memories to make money. I ignored it, because I was already 3 steps ahead. The truth was, I had everything documented. Every renovation invoice, every transfer, every message. And the moment I saw them trying to smear me in the court of public opinion, I responded, not with insults, but with facts. I published a blog post on a private family history page we all used growing up. Shared photos of the lake house. Old pictures of Dad and me building it. Scans of his handwritten letters. A full accounting of what I took from the safe, why I took it, and the legal proof backing me. Then I ended the post with one sentence. "I didn't take anything that wasn't already mine. I just stopped letting you pretend it was yours." Within days, the narrative flipped. Extended relatives, the ones who were once silent, started messaging me privately. Aunts and cousins I hadn't heard from in years. Some apologized. Some congratulated me. A few even booked weekends at the lake house. Ray and my mom stopped responding. The group chat went dark. And then, one Sunday morning, I got a final letter in the mail. It was from my mother. Handwritten. Short. Mason, I don't know if I did the right thing. Maybe I let Ray speak too much for me. Maybe I let old habits win. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to say, you were always the one who stayed true to Dad. He would have been proud. Mom. I didn't cry, but I did sit with that letter for a long time. Later that year, the lake house won a small feature in a travel magazine. I framed the article, hung it in the hallway right next to Dad's photo, the one where we're both standing on the porch, tools in hand, sawdust on our jeans. I get bookings year-round now, and sometimes I go up myself. On quiet weekends, I light the fireplace, sip coffee on the deck, and read his letters again. And every time I do, I remember the night I walked out of that house, the night they said I didn't deserve a seat at the table. They were right. I didn't. I deserved my own table. And now, I have one, with the best view on the lake. My name's Sheldon, I'm 34, and if you told me last year that a simple birthday party for my son would tear my family in half, I'd have laughed in your face. But here I am, sitting in my kitchen at 1 a.m., staring at the empty cake box from what was supposed to be a small celebration, trying to make sense of how everything spiraled so fast. You know how people say, it's just family drama, don't take it personally? Yeah, that's easy to say when it's not your mom calling you a traitor because your kid had the audacity to turn 8. I guess to make sense of any of this, I need to start with the basics. I'm a single dad to my son, Evan. He's this goofy, curious kid who can spend hours building Lego castles and explaining every tiny detail of them like he's pitching to investors. His mom and I divorced when he was 4, and while things were rough at first, I've managed to build a happy little life for the two of us. I work remotely as a graphic designer, so I'm around for him a lot, picking him up from school, making breakfast, going on weekend hikes. It's not glamorous, but it's ours. Then there's my family, my mom, my younger sister Laura, and her 2 kids, Noah and Bella. On paper, it sounds like a normal, loving family setup. But in practice, it's complicated. My mom has always had this soft spot for Laura. She's the baby of the family, as Mom likes to put it. Laura's 30, married to a guy named Greg who works construction, and they've got 2 kids under 6. She's the type of person who thrives on being the center of attention, loud, dramatic, constantly comparing her life to everyone else's. If I buy Evan a new bike, she'll immediately text me, "Oh great, now Noah will feel bad, he doesn't have one." And Mom always sides with her. Every single time. I used to let it slide because, honestly, I just wanted peace. After the divorce, Mom helped me a lot, babysitting, cooking, just being there when I was drowning. But over time, her help turned into control. She'd comment on how I raised Evan, what I fed him, what shows I let him watch. "You're too lenient," she'd say. Or worse, "Evan's getting spoiled. You're raising him to expect too much." Meanwhile, Laura could do no wrong. Her kids could throw food at the wall, and my mom would call it expressive energy. So when Evan's 8th birthday was coming up, I wanted to do something small but special. He'd been asking for a pirate-themed party for months. He had the costume picked out, the decorations bookmarked on my Amazon list, even a playlist of sea shanties, because apparently pirates need background music. I figured why not? I had a little extra saved, and he deserved a fun day. It wasn't anything extravagant, just a few of his classmates, a small cake, and some balloons in the backyard. Simple, right? Apparently not. About a week before the party, I was on the phone with Mom. We were talking about something completely unrelated when I mentioned casually, "Oh, by the way, Evan's birthday is next Saturday. We're doing a little pirate party at the house. You guys are welcome to come." There was this pause, the kind that instantly makes your stomach drop because you know what's coming. Then she sighed and said, "Oh, Sheldon, do you think that's really a good idea?" I asked her what she meant, and she launched into this long explanation about how Laura's kids had been feeling left out lately. "You know how Noah and Bella look up to Evan," she said, her tone dripping with guilt-tripping sweetness. "It wouldn't be fair to throw a big celebration when they're already feeling like they don't get as much attention." I laughed at first because I genuinely thought she was joking. But she wasn't. "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice even, "it's his birthday. He turns 8 once. It's not like I'm renting out Disneyland. That's when she got defensive. You don't understand, Sheldon. You're dividing the family. We can't have one child feeling special while the others feel left behind. She actually said that, like celebrating your own kid's birthday was an act of civil war. I tried to reason with her, explaining that I'd make sure Noah and Bella felt included, that there'd be goodie bags and games for everyone. But she cut me off with this sharp, annoyed tone. You're being selfish. You've already made everything about you and Evan this year. You took him to the zoo for Easter, remember? You posted those pictures. It made Laura feel terrible. I sat there, gripping my phone, stunned. Apparently, a father taking his kid to the zoo was now a family crime. Mom, I said slowly, you can't seriously expect me to cancel my son's birthday because my sister might feel jealous. She didn't like that. Her voice rose an octave. Don't twist my words. You're just trying to make me the bad guy again. You always do this, Sheldon. Always. That was her go-to line whenever I refused to bend. It was like arguing with a wall that could scream. By the end of the call, she was furious, accusing me of creating division and thinking I'm better than everyone else. I hung up before saying something I'd regret. For a few hours, I just sat there, staring at Evan's decorations sitting in the corner, wondering if I should just cancel the whole thing to keep the peace. But then he walked in, holding a drawing of a pirate ship, beaming with pride. Dad, do you think we can make a treasure chest cake? That was all it took. I decided right then I wasn't going to let guilt stop me from celebrating my kid's birthday. I sent out the invitations, a handful of his friends from school, my mom, Laura, and her family. I even texted Mom again, saying, "You're still invited, of course. Evan would love to see you." Her response, "We'll see." Which, in mom speak, meant no, but she wanted to make it seem like it was my fault later. The week leading up to the party was tense. Laura started sending these passive-aggressive messages in the family group chat. Little things like, "Hope the kids won't get too sad seeing Evan open all those presents." Or, "It's nice that you have so much free time for parties, Sheldon." I ignored most of them, but Mom kept chiming in with Laura's just expressing her feelings, or, "Let's not argue." Every message felt like walking on eggshells. It wasn't even about the party anymore. It was about control. About who got to decide what was fair. The night before the party, I called Mom again as a last-ditch effort to smooth things over. I told her I wanted her there, that Evan missed her. Her response was colder than I expected. "I can't support something that causes division in this family," she said flatly. "You're putting a party above family unity." I wanted to scream. "It's not about a party, Mom. It's about my son." She didn't reply. She just said, "You'll regret this, Sheldon," and hung up. That line stuck with me. I didn't even know what it meant, but it lingered in the back of my head like a bad omen. The next morning, Evan woke up at 7 a.m. sharp, already in his pirate hat, humming yo-ho-ho around the kitchen while I set up balloons. The weather was perfect, the decorations were simple but cheerful, and the kids started arriving one by one, clutching little wrapped gifts and shouting happy birthday. It was exactly the kind of pure joy you can't fake. For a while, I forgot about the drama. I forgot about Mom and Laura and all their nonsense. It was just laughter, cake, and the sound of 8-year-olds pretending to sail the high seas. But that peace didn't last long. Because when the pictures went up on Facebook, Evan smiling ear to ear, frosting on his nose, surrounded by friends, the family group chat exploded. And that's when everything really started to unravel. At first, I didn't even notice the chaos brewing. The party had just wrapped up, the kids were running around with balloon swords, and I was sitting on the porch with a cup of coffee, just breathing. For once, it felt like life was good. Evan was laughing with his friends, the decorations looked perfect, and for the first time in months, I felt like I'd done something right. I didn't even post the pictures right away, my friend Jessica did. She's one of the other parents, and she tagged me in an album titled Captain Evan's Pirate Adventure. It was sweet and innocent. But then my phone started buzzing. Once, twice, then nonstop. By the time I looked down, I had over 30 notifications from the family group chat. The first message was from my mom. Wow. So I guess some people care more about social media than their own family. Then Laura chimed in. Unbelievable. You couldn't even tone it down a little? You had to make it look like a circus? I blinked at the screen, reread the messages 3 times, and honestly thought they had to be joking. The circus they were referring to was a 10-kid backyard party with paper hats and cupcakes. There wasn't even a clown. But the tone of the group chat was vicious. Mom was sending paragraph after paragraph about family loyalty and how actions have consequences. Laura followed every few minutes with comments like, "You made my kids cry," and "Do you ever think about anyone else but Evan?" I didn't respond at first. I figured if I ignored it, they'd calm down. But then my mom sent, "Sheldon, call me now." I sighed, stepped away from the noise of the party, and called her. She picked up on the first ring. Not even a hello, just an explosion. "Do you realize what you've done?" she shouted. "Laura's been crying all morning. The kids saw those pictures, and they're heartbroken. They're asking why Evan gets everything and they don't." "Mom, it's a birthday party," I said slowly, trying to keep my cool. "You can't be serious. Don't you dare use that tone with me," she snapped. "I told you this would happen. You chose to ignore me, and now look, you've divided the family." I pinched the bridge of my nose. "Mom, I invited you. I invited Laura. You both chose not to come. That's not on me." There was silence for a beat, and then she hissed, "You knew how they'd feel. You just wanted to rub it in. You wanted to show off that you can give Evan more than Laura can give her kids." That hit me harder than I expected. "Show off," I repeated. "Mom, I bought him a $20 cake and hung dollar store decorations. What do you think I'm showing off?" But she wasn't listening anymore. "You've changed, Sheldon," she said, her voice dripping with disappointment. "Ever since you got that remote job, you think you're better than everyone. You used to be humble. You used to think about family. Now it's all about attention and money." I could feel my jaw tighten. "You're twisting everything," I said quietly. "You know this isn't about money. It's about Evan having a childhood." That's when she pulled out the ultimate weapon, guilt. "Your sister's been struggling, Sheldon. Greg's hours got cut. The kids don't even have new shoes for school yet. And you're throwing parties and posting pictures like you're some celebrity dad. How do you think that makes her feel?" And there it was. The trap. The manipulation I'd fallen for too many times. I felt that familiar wave of shame crawl up my spine, the kind that made me second-guess every decision I made. For years, Mom had this way of turning my happiness into a moral failing. Any success, any good thing in my life somehow became an attack on Laura. I tried to stay calm. "Mom," I said carefully, "I'm sorry Laura's having a hard time, but I'm not going to dim my son's birthday because of it. You can't punish Evan for being happy." Her voice cracked, not from sadness, but rage. "You're selfish. You've always been selfish. You think everything's about you. When your father was alive, I cut her off before she could drag Dad into it. Don't bring him into this." That was the last straw for her. "You know what, Sheldon? Don't call me for a while. I can't even look at you right now." And she hung up. I stood there for a long minute, phone pressed to my ear, listening to the deadline. I could still hear laughter from the yard, Evan and his friends playing pirates. It felt like two different worlds colliding, one full of joy, the other dripping with bitterness. Later that evening, after everyone left and the house was quiet, I scrolled through Facebook. The comments on Jessica's album were wholesome. Parents saying how cute the party was. Evan's classmates commenting little emojis. And then I saw it. My mom had commented, "Some people care more about parties than principles." Sad. Laura commented under it with a broken heart emoji. I felt sick. It wasn't just passive-aggressive, it was public. She'd turned what should have been a sweet memory into another chapter of family drama for everyone to see. I deleted my tag from the post, but the damage was done. Over the next few days, things got weirder. I started getting cold messages from distant relatives, cousins, aunts, even my uncle from out of state, all parroting Mom's version of the story. "You should have been more considerate. Family comes first. It's just a birthday, Sheldon." It was like she'd built an entire campaign against me overnight. Meanwhile, Laura started posting these vague Facebook statuses like, "Some people don't realize how lucky they are, and my kids don't need fancy parties to feel loved." Each one would get flooded with comments from Mom and her friends, all sympathy, all validating her victimhood. I didn't comment. I didn't even like or react. But every time I opened my phone, there it was, my sister's bitterness bleeding into the internet like poison. Then, on Wednesday, she showed up at my door. It was pouring rain, and I was in the middle of a Zoom meeting when I heard the pounding. I opened the door, and there she was, mascara running, hair soaked, clutching her phone like it had betrayed her. "I can't believe you did this to me," she said the moment I opened the door. "Laura," I started, "what are you talking about?" She pushed past me, stepping into the living room. Don't act innocent. You know exactly what you did. Laura, you weren't even at the party. You were invited. I couldn't come, she snapped. Mom said it would confuse the kids. But you still went ahead with it. And then you posted pictures everywhere. Do you know how it feels when your kids ask why Uncle Sheldon loves Evan more than them? I stared at her. That's not what this is about, I said quietly. You're not mad about the party. You're mad that Mom's paying attention to me for once. Her expression darkened. You think you're so much better, don't you? Just because you have a nice house, a stable job, and only one kid to take care of. You don't get it, Sheldon. You don't know what it's like to struggle. I crossed my arms. Laura, I've struggled plenty. I raised Evan on my own. I worked nights. I lived in a one-bedroom for years. You're not the only one who's had it hard. But she wasn't listening. Mom's right about you, she said bitterly. You've changed. You used to care about family. Now you're just cold. I felt something inside me snap. You mean I used to do everything Mom said? I used to let her guilt me into silence. That's not caring about family. That's being controlled. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Then her voice went cold. You'll regret this. You really will. And before I could say another word, she stormed out, slamming the door behind her so hard it rattled the frame. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying her words. You'll regret this. What did that even mean? Was she just being dramatic, or was she actually planning something? The next morning, I found out. My mom had messaged the entire extended family again. Cousins, uncles, even people I hadn't spoken to in years. She sent them a long, emotional message about how I disrespected the family values and excluded Laura's children out of pride. She made it sound like I threw a lavish, exclusive event and intentionally didn't invite anyone. It was a masterpiece of emotional manipulation, complete fiction wrapped in sentimentality. The worst part? People believed her. I got a call from my Aunt Carol, the kind, older aunt who always sent Christmas cards and used to babysit me when I was little. She sounded disappointed. Sheldon, I don't understand what's going on, but your mom's really hurt. She says you've changed. I sighed, leaning against the counter. Aunt Carol, I threw a small birthday party for my son. That's it. She hesitated. I know, honey. I'm sure that's true. But your mom's in tears. Maybe you should apologize, just to make peace. And that's when I realized they'd built their own narrative, and I was the villain in it. It didn't matter what I said or did. Mom and Laura had already decided who I was going to be in their story. For the next week, it felt like walking through a fog of tension. I didn't hear from either of them directly, but I could feel their presence online. The passive-aggressive posts, the whispered gossip among relatives, the constant, suffocating guilt. Evan noticed too. One night, while we were watching a movie, he looked up at me and said, Dad, is Grandma mad at me? That question gutted me. I told him no, that grown-ups just argue sometimes. But inside, I knew the truth. My mom was using him as a pawn in her control game. And as angry as I was, I still thought maybe, just maybe, things would calm down. That they'd get over it once the next drama came along. But then something happened that made me realize this wasn't just family tension anymore. It was war. Because the following Sunday, I got a text from my boss asking if everything was okay at home. Apparently, someone had emailed him, anonymously, claiming that I'd been neglecting work duties due to personal drama and that I was using company hours for personal projects. The email included screenshots from my Facebook, pictures from the birthday party. And the only people who could have sent those were family. That's when I knew things had gone too far. When I saw my boss's name pop up on my phone that Sunday morning, I didn't think much of it. He's usually pretty laid back, sends memes, random design ideas, that sort of thing. But the text wasn't friendly this time. Hey Sheldon, just checking in. Everything okay at home? Got a weird email about you. Thought you should know. I frowned, reread the message twice, and then called him immediately. Hey, what's this about? He sounded hesitant. Look, man, I don't know what's going on, but someone sent an email to HR, said you've been neglecting work because of some kind of family situation. It had screenshots from your Facebook. The party photos. Said you were running personal events during work hours. For a moment, I couldn't even process it. You're kidding, I said. That party was on a Saturday. I know, he said. I told them that. But it still got to go through HR, you know how it is. I hung up feeling like the air had been knocked out of me. I sat there in silence, phone in hand, staring at Evan's drawings taped to the fridge. Pirates, castles, a big red cake with candles. Somehow, that innocent birthday had turned into something twisted and vindictive. Someone had deliberately gone out of their way to sabotage me at work, and the list of possible suspects was painfully short. I tried to convince myself it couldn't be them. My mom might be manipulative, but she wasn't cruel. Not like this. And Laura? For all her drama, she'd never mess with my job, right? But deep down, I knew better. By noon, I got the official HR email asking for clarification regarding personal activities conducted during designated working hours. They attached the same screenshots. My heart sank when I noticed the captions. They weren't just random Facebook posts. They were cropped, annotated, highlighted. Someone had gone through my pictures, circled timestamps, and added comments like possible violation of company policy. It wasn't just meddling. It was a hit job. That night, I called Mom. I didn't want to believe she was behind it, but I needed to hear her voice. She answered on the second ring, her tone cool and detached. "Oh, so you're speaking to me again," she said. "I just need to ask you something," I said, trying to stay calm. "Did you or Laura send an email to my boss?" There was a pause. "What? Why would we do that?" "You tell me," I said. "Because someone used pictures from my Facebook, pictures only my family could have seen. And now my job's at risk." Her tone shifted into that wounded, theatrical voice she used whenever she was cornered. "How dare you accuse me of something like that, Sheldon? Do you think I have nothing better to do than sabotage your career?" "I don't know what to think anymore," I said, my voice cracking slightly. "All I know is someone went out of their way to hurt me." She was silent for a long time. Then she said, almost coldly, "Well, maybe that's karma. You hurt your family first." That was it. The confirmation she didn't mean to give. "Wow," I whispered. "You actually think I deserve this?" She didn't deny it. "Actions have consequences, Sheldon. You divided us. You embarrassed your sister. Maybe now you'll learn how it feels to lose something." I hung up before I said something I couldn't take back. My hands were shaking so badly that I dropped my phone. For a few minutes, I just stood there, breathing hard, trying to wrap my head around what had just happened. My own mother, the woman who used to bandage my knees when I fell off my bike, had essentially admitted she didn't care if I lost my livelihood. It was more than betrayal. It was like a piece of my foundation cracked. For the next few days, everything felt wrong. HR eventually cleared me. They saw the timestamps, realized it was a weekend, and dropped the issue. But I couldn't focus. Every time I sat down to work, I kept picturing my mom at her kitchen table, whispering to Laura, planning how to teach me a lesson. Then came the next blow. Evan was supposed to go to Mom's the following Friday, part of our routine. Despite everything, I tried to keep that bond for his sake. I figured, no matter how bad things got between us adults, she wouldn't drag him into it. I was wrong. When I dropped him off, Mom greeted us with that strained smile she uses when she's pretending to be fine. "Hi, sweetheart," she said to Evan, ignoring me completely. "Did you bring your pajamas?" Evan nodded, running inside. I followed him with his backpack. "Mom," I started, "I know things are messy right now, but can we please keep him out of it? He doesn't need to hear." She cut me off. "Don't lecture me about parenting, Sheldon. I raised 2 kids. You've raised one, barely. That one stung, but I bit my tongue. Just don't say anything to him, okay? Let him have a normal weekend." She gave a tight smile. "Of course. You know me. I'd never badmouth you." I wanted to believe her. I really did. When I picked Evan up 2 days later, something was different. He was quiet in the car, not his usual chatty self. Finally, halfway home, he said, "Dad, why don't you like Aunt Laura?" I nearly slammed on the brakes. "What? Grandma said you don't like her anymore because you think she's poor," he said softly, fiddling with the strap of his backpack. "She said you made her cry." I felt my stomach drop. "Buddy," I said gently, "that's not true. I love your Aunt Laura. We just had an argument, that's all." He nodded, but he didn't look convinced. He just stared out the window. That night, after he went to bed, I sat in the dark living room for over an hour. My mom wasn't just undermining me. She was poisoning my son's perception of me. She'd crossed a line I didn't think she ever would. Over the next week, she doubled down. Every attempt I made to talk things out was met with cold silence or snide remarks. Laura, meanwhile, was on a rampage, posting quotes about toxic people and family betrayers, each one vague enough to be deniable but obvious enough to hit its target. Their little echo chamber of relatives fueled it, leaving comments like, "Stay strong," and some people just forget where they came from. Then came the worst blow yet, the one that broke whatever fragile thread of trust remained. One morning, Evan's school principal called me. Her tone was polite but uneasy. "Mr. Reynolds, I wanted to reach out regarding an email we received." My stomach dropped again. "An email?" "Yes," she said. "It was from a family member, I believe. They claimed you've been exposing Evan to unstable environments and requested that we keep an eye out for any signs of distress." For a second, I couldn't speak. My voice came out barely above a whisper. "You're kidding." "I wish I was," she said. "We have to take every report seriously, but from what I've seen, Evan is a happy, well-adjusted child. I just thought you should know." I thanked her and hung up, then sat there with my head in my hands. I knew exactly who did it. This wasn't about feelings anymore. This was a campaign, a deliberate attempt to isolate me, to make me look unstable, unfit, ungrateful. I called Mom again, shaking with anger. She answered immediately, as if she'd been expecting it. "Oh, finally decided to call. What did you tell Evan's school?" I demanded. Her tone was icy calm. I did what any concerned grandmother would do. I made sure my grandson was safe. "Safe? From what?" "From me," I said, my voice rising. "You're weaponizing my own child against me." "You're overreacting," she said. "You've been so emotional lately, Sheldon. Maybe it's best if Evan spends more time with people who can give him stability." That word, stability, felt like a knife. "You're not taking him from me," I said. "Don't even think about it." She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "If you won't think about what's best for him, I will." I hung up before I lost control. My hands were trembling, my pulse racing. For the first time in my life, I genuinely felt afraid of my own family. Not physically, but emotionally, psychologically. They'd crossed from petty manipulation into full-blown character assassination. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept pacing, checking on Evan, watching him sleep peacefully, unaware of the storm brewing outside his door. I thought about my dad, how different things had been when he was alive. He used to keep Mom's temper in check. After he passed, it was like something inside her snapped. And now, she was using the one thing she knew I'd never fight dirty over, my son. The next morning, I woke up to a barrage of missed calls from Laura. I ignored the first 3, but eventually, curiosity got the better of me. When I answered, her voice was trembling, but not from sadness. From fury. "I can't believe you told everyone Mom's crazy," she snapped. "What?" I said. "I didn't tell anyone that." "You did," she shouted. "Uncle Mark called her last night, saying you were spreading lies about how she's manipulating everyone. You're tearing this family apart, Sheldon." "I'm tearing it apart," I said, laughing bitterly. "You two have been trashing me nonstop for weeks." She didn't let me finish. "Mom's done with you. She says you're not welcome at family gatherings anymore. And if you think she's going to babysit Evan again after the way you've treated her, you're delusional." "Good," I said, the words leaving my mouth before I could stop them. "I don't want her near him anyway." There was a pause, then a quiet, venomous, "You'll regret saying that." And she hung up. That was the last time I spoke to either of them for a while. But their silence didn't mean peace. It was the calm before the real storm, the kind where everything looks still just before it breaks completely. Because the following week, something arrived in my mailbox that would change everything. It wasn't a letter. It was a manila envelope. No return address. Inside were printed screenshots, my Facebook posts, text conversations taken out of context, and a short handwritten note that said, "You're not fit to raise a child. We're going to make sure everyone knows." And I recognized the handwriting instantly. It was my mother's. I stared at that manila envelope for what felt like an hour, my hands trembling so hard that the papers rattled. The handwriting was unmistakable. My mother's perfect cursive, the same one she used on every birthday card, every Christmas tag, every guilt-laden note she'd ever left me growing up. Except this time, it wasn't "love you, sweetheart." It was a threat. For a long moment, I just sat there on the couch, the letter resting in my lap, the room completely silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. Evan was in his room, humming to himself while building with Legos, completely unaware that his father's world was unraveling one quiet act of malice at a time. The letter didn't have any real accusation that could hold weight. It was mostly emotional manipulation disguised as concern. Things like, "He's emotionally unstable. He isolates the boy from his family. He's erratic and disrespectful toward authority figures." But it was the last line that made my stomach twist. If he doesn't change, I will do what's necessary to protect my grandson. That sentence changed something in me. It wasn't just control anymore. It wasn't about guilt or appearances. My mother was threatening to take Evan from me, using her warped sense of righteousness as justification. I didn't call her. I didn't call anyone. I just sat there, letting the fear bleed into anger, then numbness. My phone buzzed every few minutes with new group chat notifications. Aunts, cousins, relatives I barely knew all chiming in with "praying for you, Sheldon," or "hope you find peace soon." It was like watching a coordinated smear campaign unfold in real time, except no one was brave enough to say what they were actually accusing me of. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the handwriting on that letter, the way she'd curved the Y in unfit, the way the ink had smudged slightly, like she'd paused, maybe even smiled, while writing it. Around 2 a.m., I walked quietly into Evan's room. He was sprawled across the bed, mouth slightly open, clutching a stuffed dragon he'd had since he was 2. I sat on the edge of his bed and watched him for a long time. He looked peaceful, safe, and for the first time in weeks, I felt clarity, cold, sharp clarity. If my mother was willing to destroy me to protect him, then I needed to protect him from her. The next morning, I called my lawyer. He's a family friend, older guy named Tom who's seen his fair share of messy divorces. I told him everything, from the birthday party to the HR email to the envelope. He was quiet for a while, then sighed. "Sheldon, I've seen controlling parents, but this is different. You need to start documenting everything. Every text, every call, every message. Don't engage with her anymore. Keep it all on record." I did exactly that. I started a digital folder, Mom and Laura stuff, and filled it with screenshots, messages, voicemails. I even printed some of them, like I was preparing for a court case that hadn't yet begun. It felt paranoid, but something in my gut told me it was necessary. For a while, I went radio silent. No texts, no calls, no updates. I didn't attend family dinners, ignored the birthdays, even muted the family chat. It wasn't easy, not because I missed them, but because the silence made me realize how much of my life had revolved around managing their chaos. Without their noise, my days felt eerily empty. Still, there were small things that made it bearable. I took Evan to the park more often, started cooking new recipes, played old board games I'd forgotten about. He laughed more. The circles under his eyes faded. For the first time in years, our little house felt like a home again. But even peace had a shadow. The phone calls didn't stop, they just changed tone. My mom would leave voicemails that started with "Sheldon, please, we just want to talk," and ended with "You're breaking this family apart." Laura sent texts that alternated between tearful apologies and angry rants. "Mom's miserable," she wrote once. "She barely eats because of what you've done." Another time, it was, "If you loved her, you'd fix this." I didn't respond to any of it. It was around that time I started therapy. I hadn't planned to. I was just so mentally drained that one night, after putting Evan to bed, I Googled adult children of controlling parents. What I found hit too close to home. I booked an appointment the next day. Dr. Patel, my therapist, was calm and direct. She didn't sugarcoat anything. After I told her about the letter and the emails, she looked at me and said, "Sheldon, your mother doesn't see you as an adult. She sees you as an extension of herself, something she can control, correct, and use to feed her sense of purpose. The moment you break free, she feels abandoned." That word, abandoned, stuck with me. My mom had built her entire identity around being needed. She wasn't ready to face the version of me that didn't ask for permission anymore. Still, as much as I wanted to stay detached, her shadow lingered. She started calling Evan's school again, asking innocent questions. The secretary told me about it, apologetically. "She says she's just checking on her grandson's progress," she said. "But it's been happening a lot." I switched Evan to a new school 2 towns over. It was a longer drive, but it gave me peace of mind. I didn't tell anyone where he'd transferred. That's when the silence finally came, a long, eerie quiet. No more calls, no texts, no cryptic posts. It was like she'd vanished overnight. For a few weeks, I almost convinced myself it was over. Then, one afternoon, while I was cleaning out the garage, Evan came running and holding something. "Dad, look what the mailman gave me." It was a small box, wrapped neatly in floral paper. My stomach sank when I saw the handwriting on the tag. "For my sweet boy, from Grandma." I took it gently from his hands. "Thanks, buddy. Let's open it together later, okay?" He nodded, satisfied, and ran off. I waited until he was asleep that night before unwrapping it. Inside was a small toy ship, a perfect little wooden replica of a pirate boat. But there was also a note. "One day you'll understand that your father isn't always right. I'll always be here when you need me." I sat there, holding that note under the dim kitchen light, and felt something in my chest harden. She wasn't done. She'd just changed tactics. If she couldn't control me directly, she'd work through Evan. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat at the table, watching that toy ship like it might come alive and whisper her voice through the walls. The next morning, I packed it up and threw it away. I told Evan the toy had broken. He looked disappointed but didn't question it. From then on, I stopped pretending this would resolve itself. I started planning. Quietly, methodically. I changed my phone number, switched to a new email, deleted my Facebook. I even talked to Tom, my lawyer, about what steps to take if she ever tried to make a legal move for visitation. He advised me to get ahead of it, to build a clear record showing her instability and interference. So I did. I kept every voicemail, every text. I started journaling, writing down every strange thing that happened. It felt obsessive at first, but it gave me control again, a sense that I wasn't just reacting anymore. Meanwhile, Laura kept trying to rope me back in. She sent long messages that sounded rehearsed, as if dictated by Mom herself. "She's lonely, Sheldon. She talks about you every day. Don't punish her for caring too much." When I didn't respond, she sent voice notes, crying, begging, then yelling. The last one she sent ended with, "You're killing her. You'll regret this when she's gone." I didn't reply, but her words haunted me. What if my silence did push Mom over the edge? What if she really did get sick from all the stress? The guilt sat heavy on my chest for days, until I remembered the letter. No, she wasn't the one dying inside. I was. Slowly, every time I let her narrative dictate how I felt. Every time I questioned my own decisions because of her voice in my head. That realization changed everything. I started small, blocked her number, muted Laura. I warned Evan's new school about her, gave them my lawyer's card. I even told my neighbors, just in case she showed up unannounced. Then I started saving money, quietly, methodically, planning to move. Not far, just far enough that she couldn't drop by or find us through old connections. It felt wrong, like I was abandoning her. But every time I looked at Evan, I knew I was doing the right thing. One night, while cleaning up after dinner, I caught my reflection in the kitchen window, tired eyes, hair a mess, shoulders slumped. And for the first time in my life, I didn't see the bad sun. I saw a man who was done being broken down. Still, the pain lingered. Holidays came and went without a word. I saw pictures online. Mom hosting Christmas dinner with Laura, smiling for the camera. There was an empty chair in the corner where I used to sit. Evan asked why we didn't visit anymore. I told him, sometimes family needs space to figure things out. He nodded, accepting it with that innocent faith only kids have. But I knew the truth. Space wasn't enough. They'd already burned the bridge. And while I was busy rebuilding my life in silence, they were planning their next move, something I never saw coming. Because just as things started to settle, I got a knock on the door that made my stomach drop. It wasn't Laura. It wasn't Mom. It was someone holding an official-looking envelope, one with a county seal. And when I opened it, my hands went cold. It was a notice from family court. My mother had officially filed for grandparent visitation rights. When that envelope landed in my hands, it felt like a physical blow. I sat there for a few minutes staring at the seal, the words Family Court of Jefferson County stamped neatly at the top. I already knew what it was before I opened it, but reading it still made my stomach twist. My mother had filed for grandparent visitation rights, claiming I was alienating her from her grandson, and that maintaining a relationship with her was vital to his emotional stability. The petition was full of manipulative phrasing, lines like, "Sheldon has demonstrated erratic behavior and hostility toward family members, and the child's welfare is best served by contact with both sides of his family." The irony was almost poetic. She had spent months sabotaging me, turning relatives against me, threatening my job, and poisoning my son against me. And now she was the one asking the court to protect her from me. Tom, my lawyer, read through the documents with a grim look on his face. "She's trying to build a record of you being uncooperative," he said. But this could backfire on her. Judges don't like family members weaponizing kids. You've been keeping records, right? I opened the folder on my laptop, the one labeled for when it gets bad. Dozens of screenshots, emails, transcribed voicemails. Everything neatly organized, dated, documented. Yeah, I said quietly. I've got everything. He nodded. Good. Then this might be the beginning of the end for her control. And he was right. The weeks leading up to the hearing were some of the hardest, but also, in a strange way, the most freeing. It forced me to finally face everything I'd been avoiding. My fear of her, my need for her approval, my guilt over walking away. I spent evenings talking to Dr. Patel, working through years of emotional conditioning. She helped me see that boundaries aren't cruelty, they're survival. I also started focusing more on Evan, not out of fear, but out of love. We went camping one weekend, just the two of us. No phones, no drama, no noise. He roasted marshmallows while wearing a flashlight on his forehead and said, "Dad, I like it when it's just us." That one sentence hit me harder than anything else. When we got home, I threw myself into work again, something I hadn't done in months without a cloud over my head. My designs started getting noticed. My boss recommended me for a senior project, then a promotion. It wasn't just luck, it was the absence of constant chaos. Without my mother draining my focus, I had space to grow. Meanwhile, the silence from her side grew louder. Laura had gone quiet, too, though she occasionally posted cryptic things like, "Some people only realize what they've lost when it's gone." But I didn't engage. I didn't even check the comments anymore. The day of the hearing, I walked into that courthouse calm. Not confident, not vengeful, just steady. Mom was there, sitting next to Laura, both of them dressed like they were attending a funeral. When she saw me, her expression flickered. Not anger, not sadness, but something that looked like disbelief. Maybe she'd expected me to show up shaking, apologizing, begging. Tom leaned over and whispered, "Remember, just tell the truth. You've got the facts on your side." When it was my turn to speak, I did. Slowly, carefully, without emotion. I told the judge about the fake email to my employer, the calls to Evan's school, the letter, the manipulation. I provided screenshots, timestamps, voicemails, all neat and precise. My mom tried to interrupt twice, claiming I was lying, but the judge shut her down. By the time it was her turn, her calm facade had cracked. She rambled about family unity and how children need their grandmothers, but every word dug her deeper. The judge ended the hearing by saying he'd review everything and issue a ruling in a few weeks. But I already knew which way the wind was blowing. When we walked out of the courthouse, Laura avoided eye contact. Mom glared at me and said, in a low, shaking voice, "You've humiliated me." I didn't reply. I just said, "You did that yourself." And for the first time in my life, she had no comeback. After that, things shifted. The ruling came 3 weeks later. Her petition was denied. The judge wrote that her pattern of interference and boundary violations made continued contact inappropriate without my consent. He even added that if she persisted, I could pursue a restraining order. It was surreal. After a lifetime of being undermined, manipulated, and blamed, someone in authority had finally said, in writing, "She's wrong." When I read that line, I didn't cry. I didn't cheer. I just sat there, exhaling years of tension I didn't know I'd been holding. Life didn't magically become perfect after that, but it became peaceful, which was better. I moved to a new town with Evan, a quiet neighborhood near the lake. I got the promotion, started saving for a house. He made new friends. I even started running again in the mornings, something I hadn't done since college. Every so often, I'd think about my mom and Laura, not with hate, but with a distant sort of pity. I knew they were still telling their version of the story to anyone who'd listen, but it didn't matter anymore. Their words couldn't touch me now, because I had built something stronger than their guilt trips, a stable, quiet life. One evening, Evan came home from school with a drawing, a picture of the two of us standing next to a little house, the sun shining behind it. At the top, he'd written, "Me and Dad, Team Awesome." I laughed so hard I almost cried. That night, I tucked him into bed and stood in the doorway for a long time, just watching him sleep. My phone buzzed once, an unknown number. For a second, I thought about ignoring it, but something made me answer. A quiet voice came through the line. "Sheldon, it's me." It was Laura. She sounded different, tired, shaky. I don't know if you'll even listen, she said. But Mom's not doing well. She's been saying strange things. I think she's planning something. My pulse quickened. What kind of something? Laura hesitated. She keeps saying she'll make things right, that if she can't see Evan, no one can. And just like that, the peace I'd built began to tremble again. Because my mother wasn't finished yet. For a few seconds after Laura's words, I didn't move. My hand stayed frozen on the phone, my heart pounding in that heavy, slow way that makes it hard to breathe. What do you mean? If she can't see Evan, no one can. I asked. Laura's voice broke. I don't know exactly. She's been different lately. Paranoid. She keeps saying you turned him against her. Yesterday, she started going through old family photos and muttering about fixing things. I think she's planning something drastic. I closed my eyes, took a breath, and forced my tone to stay even. Where is she now? At home, Laura said. But she's not answering my calls anymore. She's just angry, Sheldon. I think she blames everyone. Even me. That didn't surprise me. The one thing my mother hated more than being defied was losing control. The court's denial hadn't just bruised her pride. It shattered her entire self-image. I thanked Laura for telling me and hung up. My hands were steady now, my mind strangely calm. This was it. I'd spent my whole life reacting to her, defending, apologizing, explaining. But not this time. This time, I would take control. For the next few days, I watched and waited. I made sure our locks were upgraded, added cameras around the house, and told Evan's school to call me immediately if anyone tried to pick him up. I even spoke with Tom again. If she crosses the line, I said, I want to be ready. He nodded. Then we prepare for a restraining order. But Sheldon, you could take it further. If she's been harassing you for months, we can file for a protective injunction and possibly press charges for defamation and workplace interference. It hadn't occurred to me before. I'd been so focused on surviving that I'd never considered fighting back. So I gathered everything. Every voicemail, every email, every manipulation she'd sent my way. I compiled it into a single, detailed document. Every lie, every interference, every instance of her crossing a boundary. It was both heartbreaking and liberating. Years of pain neatly summarized in evidence form. But I wasn't doing it out of spite. I was doing it for peace. For closure. For Evan. A week later, the opportunity presented itself. Mom showed up unannounced. It was a Tuesday evening. I was making dinner when the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole, and there she was, standing on the porch, clutching a framed photo of me, her, and Dad from when I was a kid. Her face was drawn, tired, her eyes red-rimmed. I didn't open the door right away. My first instinct was to protect Evan. He was upstairs, reading. The last thing I wanted was for him to see her like this. But something in her expression stopped me. She looked broken. I opened the door, leaving the screen between us. Sheldon, she said quietly. Please. I just want to talk. About what? I asked. She looked down at the photo. About everything. About how we got here. Her tone was soft, almost gentle. The kind of voice she used when I was little, and she wanted me to let my guard down. But I'd learned better. I don't think there's anything left to talk about, I said evenly. The court made its decision. You need to respect that. Her lips trembled. Do you really hate me that much? I sighed. I don't hate you. But I can't let you keep doing this. You've crossed too many lines. She looked up, tears brimming. I did it all because I love him, Sheldon. Because you've taken him away from me. You did it because you wanted control, I said softly. That's not love. Something flickered in her eyes. A flash of anger under the sadness. You sound just like your father, she spat. Cold. Ungrateful. Always thinking you're better than everyone. There it was, the mask slipping. I nodded slowly. Then maybe I learned from the best. Her face hardened. You'll regret this, she whispered. You think you've won, but you don't understand what family means. I closed the door gently. Not a slam, not a shout. Just a quiet, final click. I thought that was the end of it. But she wasn't done. The next morning, I found a post on Facebook, a long, public rant from her account about parents who turn their children into strangers and families destroyed by arrogance. It didn't name me, but it didn't have to. Half the extended family piled into the comments, offering sympathy and outrage. I didn't reply. I didn't even screenshot it, because I had already expected this. Instead, I forwarded everything, the post, the visit, the calls, to Tom. Let's proceed, I wrote. 2 days later, We filed for a restraining order and a cease and desist letter drafted by his firm. Every accusation, every interference, every smear was laid out professionally, unemotionally, and legally. It was airtight. When she was served, Laura called me again, panicking. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Mom's losing it. She says you're trying to ruin her life." I didn't raise my voice. "I'm protecting mine." For once, Laura didn't argue. She just whispered, "Maybe you should have done this years ago." The silence that followed was long, but this time, it wasn't heavy. It was cleansing. A few weeks later, the judge granted the restraining order. 6 months minimum, with possible extension. It barred her from contacting me, Evan, or our workplaces and schools. Any violation would result in immediate legal action. I thought I'd feel triumphant, but what I felt was something quieter, relief. It wasn't revenge in the dramatic sense. It was calm, measured justice. The kind where you don't need to yell or gloat. The truth does the work for you. But there was one final step. Through Tom, I learned she'd violated a few privacy laws by contacting my employer and sending false information. We could sue, not for a massive amount, but enough to make a point. I hesitated at first. Suing your own mother felt grotesque. But then I remembered that letter, the one that said if he doesn't change, I'll do what's necessary. She'd made her choice long ago. So we filed a civil suit for defamation and workplace interference. Quietly, legally, without fanfare. It didn't take long. She didn't even fight it. The settlement was small but symbolic. I used the money to open a college fund for Evan. When I told him, he smiled and said, "That's awesome, Dad. Grandma helped." I didn't correct him. I just smiled and said, "In a way, yeah." After that, things finally shifted for good. I poured my energy into work, and soon my designs landed in a national campaign. My income doubled, then tripled. I bought a modest house by the lake, not fancy, but peaceful, surrounded by pine trees and silence. Evan got a dog. We named him Scout. Some nights, when the wind rustled through the trees, I'd sit on the porch and think about everything that had happened. The parties, the fights, the letters. It all felt distant now, like something that happened to another version of me. I'd taken back my life, not through rage or destruction, but through patience and precision. That was the real revenge. But one evening, as I was locking up for the night, I saw something wedged in the doorframe. An envelope. No address, no stamp, just my name in shaky handwriting. My chest tightened. I brought it inside, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at it under the warm light. I thought about throwing it away. I thought about burning it. But curiosity made me open it. Inside was a single piece of paper. "You've taken everything from me. But don't worry, I'm not done yet." No signature. No return address. Just that. And I could tell, even without a name. It was her handwriting. I sat there staring at that note, the air around me feeling heavier by the second. It was short. Only a few words, but it carried years of venom. My first instinct was fear. My second was exhaustion. I was tired of reacting, tired of jumping every time she reached out from whatever corner she was hiding in. So I took a picture of the letter and sent it straight to Tom, my lawyer. No hesitation this time. Within an hour, he replied, "Bring it in tomorrow. We'll hand it to the authorities." And that's exactly what I did. When the officer at the station read the note, he frowned and said, "Given the restraining order, this counts as a violation. We'll file a report and notify her immediately. If she contacts you again, it becomes criminal harassment." Hearing that felt strange, not satisfying, not thrilling, just final. Like a door quietly locking behind me. A few days later, Laura called again. I almost didn't answer, but something in me wanted closure. Her voice was fragile this time, drained of all the self-righteous edge she used to have. "Sheldon, she's gone," she said. My stomach dropped. "What do you mean gone?" She packed up and left. No one knows where. She sold the house. Didn't even tell me. Just left a note that said, "They'll realize what they've done when I'm gone." For a moment, I didn't say anything. I wasn't surprised. I think part of me had been waiting for her final act of drama. But still, hearing it out loud made something twist inside me. "Laura," I said quietly, "I hope she finds peace." Laura sniffled. She lost everything, Sheldon. Her reputation, her friends, even her church group won't talk to her. People finally saw what she was doing after that court mess. They called it elder manipulation, said she'd weaponized guilt. She's all alone now. That silence stretched between us for a long time. I didn't gloat. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt free. After that call, the dust finally settled. Months passed. The restraining order quietly expired, but I never heard from her again. No letters. No calls. Nothing. It was as if she'd vanished into thin air. Laura tried to rebuild her own life. We spoke occasionally, cautiously. She apologized once, voice trembling, saying, "I should have stopped her sooner." I told her I forgave her because I meant it. Holding on to hate would have just kept me chained to the same cycle Mom lived in. Evan grew older, happier. He stopped asking about Grandma. I think he could sense that some stories are better left untold. By the time he turned 10, our lives were quiet again, peacefully ordinary. The house by the lake had become our sanctuary. We'd fish in the mornings, play chess on rainy days, laugh about small things. The chaos that used to hang over us had turned into a distant memory, like a dream I'd finally woken up from. One afternoon, as the sun was setting over the water, I sat on the porch while Evan threw sticks for Scout. He turned to me suddenly and said, "Dad, you're really happy now, aren't you?" I smiled. "Yeah, buddy, I think I am." He grinned and went back to playing, his laughter echoing across the lake. Inside, on my desk, that last letter was still locked in a drawer, sealed in a plastic sleeve, filed away with the rest of the evidence from that chapter of my life. I never threw it out, not because I wanted to keep a piece of her, but because it reminded me of something important, that sometimes peace isn't what you're given, it's what you take back. And as the last light of day flickered across the lake, I realized something. My mother had spent her whole life trying to control everyone around her, but in the end, the only thing she controlled was her own downfall. I stood up, looked at my son, and whispered under my breath, not in anger, not in triumph, just with quiet certainty. Cycle's broken. Thanksgiving is supposed to be about family, right? About gratitude, and stuffing your face until you're too full to even think about getting up from the table. At least, that's what I used to believe before this year blew it all to pieces. My name's Adam, I'm 27, and until that night, I honestly thought I could still find some shred of normalcy with my mom's side of the family. It wasn't like I didn't know they had their issues. My uncle had a gambling problem that everyone pretended didn't exist. My aunt loved to whisper everyone's dirty laundry to anyone who'd listen, and my cousins, well, let's just say calling them entitled would have been putting it kindly. But they were still family. They were the people who used to pass me the mashed potatoes and kiss my forehead at Christmas, and I kept clinging to this stupid, outdated hope that somewhere deep down, they still cared about me, too. This year, they invited me to Aunt Carol's house for Thanksgiving. It was supposed to be a fresh start, according to her text, complete with a bunch of emojis and fake excitement. Part of me didn't want to go, but another part, the dumb, optimistic part, thought, maybe this time would be different. Maybe I wouldn't leave feeling like an outsider they barely tolerated. I even baked a pumpkin pie from scratch, something my mom used to do before she passed away a few years ago. It felt right, honoring her memory like that. I showed up right on time, pie in hand, trying to brush off the tiny pit of dread growing in my stomach. The first sign that things were off came the moment I walked through the door. Everyone turned to look at me, and then immediately turned away, like I was just some delivery guy who'd walked into the wrong house. No greetings. No hugs. No, "Hey, Adam, glad you could make it." Just silence, except for my cousin Travis, who gave me a slow, mocking clap before going back to his conversation. I swallowed the lump in my throat, forced a smile, and made my way to the kitchen to drop off the pie. Dinner itself wasn't much better. I got stuck at the very end of the table, crammed between the coat rack and a wobbly chair that looked like it might give out if I breathed too hard. Plates were passed around, but somehow, mine always came to me already half empty. When I reached for the gravy boat, Aunt Carol accidentally knocked it off the table. It splattered all over my shirt, and everyone burst out laughing. I laughed too, but it felt hollow, brittle. I excused myself to the bathroom to clean up, staring at my reflection in the mirror, wondering why I kept doing this to myself. By the time dessert rolled around, I decided to call it a night. I figured I'd make a quick exit, go home, and try to salvage what was left of the evening with some bad Netflix movies and maybe a frozen pizza. As I pulled my coat off the rack, I slipped my hand into my pocket for my keys and froze. My wallet was missing. My stomach dropped. I dug through my other pockets, patted down my coat, even checked the floor. Nothing. A sick, creeping feeling started to crawl up my spine. I forced myself to stay calm and walked back into the living room. Most of the family was sprawled out on couches, watching some football game, half asleep from the food coma. Travis caught my eye and smirked. "Something wrong, Adam?" he asked, his voice using fake concern. "Yeah," I said tightly. "My wallet's gone. Has anyone seen it?" For a second, the room was dead silent. Then someone, my other cousin Jess, snorted into her drink. Uncle Rick muttered something about me always making a scene. Aunt Carol sighed loudly, like I was just exhausting her by existing. But it was Travis who spoke up again, flashing that smirk that made me want to put my fist through the wall. "Maybe you just misplaced it," he said. "Wouldn't be the first time, right?" I gritted my teeth. I didn't misplace it. Travis leaned back, kicked his feet up on the coffee table, and gave a lazy stretch. "Or maybe," he said casually, "you're just upset 'cause you're broke, and you're looking for someone to blame." I stared at him, feeling the blood pound in my ears. Every instinct in me screamed to just walk out, to leave before I did something I couldn't take back. But something about his smugness, the way the whole family seemed to be silently backing him up, made something inside me snap. Without saying a word, I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. I figured maybe my credit card was still safe. Maybe I could cancel my debit card and deal with the headache later. I wish I hadn't looked. My savings account, my carefully built emergency fund that I'd spent years growing, was wiped clean. Zero. Not a cent left. For a second, I thought maybe it was a glitch. A mistake. But then Travis leaned over, craning his neck to peek at my screen, and laughed. "Oops," he said, shrugging. "Yes, you should have set a better password, cousin." The room erupted into laughter again. Even Aunt Carol chuckled behind her glass. It felt like the air got sucked out of my lungs. My hands were trembling as I shoved my phone back into my pocket and grabbed my coat for real this time. I didn't trust myself to speak. I didn't trust myself not to start screaming. As I stormed toward the door, Travis called after me. "Hey, Adam." I stopped, my hand on the doorknob. "Think of it as our bonus for putting up with you all these years." The laughter was deafening. My vision blurred. For a second, I considered just walking out, pretending this was some bad dream I could wake up from. But then I remembered something. Something important. And as the rage cooled into something sharper, colder, I turned back toward them, forcing a smile. "Then you'll appreciate what's coming next," I said softly. They laughed even harder, like it was the best joke they'd heard all night. I walked out without another word, letting the door slam behind me. The cold night air hit me like a slap, but it also cleared my head. I leaned against my car, pulling out my phone again, not to call the bank, not to text a friend. No, I opened a different app, the one I downloaded months ago but never thought I'd need to use. See, what they didn't know, what they had never bothered to find out, was that I'd started working part-time for a financial security company last year, helping them beta test a new anti-fraud system. As part of the agreement, I'd been required to install a tracker on all my banking apps and devices, a tracker that could trace unauthorized access, pinpoint locations, and generate evidence admissible in court. And oh, boy, did I have evidence. I filed the report in less than 5 minutes. The officer on the emergency line was polite but firm. "Stay on the scene," he said. "We're sending a unit now." I didn't have to wait long. Less than 10 minutes later, red and blue lights flashed at the end of the block. My heart thudded painfully against my ribs as I watched 2 squad cars pull up, headlights slicing through the dark. Doors slammed. Boots crunched against the gravel. I stayed by my car, arms crossed, as they approached the house. Then came the pounding on the door. Inside, I could hear the muffled confusion, the hurried footsteps, the sharp voices rising in alarm. Travis' voice was the loudest. I heard Aunt Carol's shrill, panicked shriek. The door finally creaked open, and the officers stepped inside. The door hadn't even fully swung open before one of the officers barked out, "Everyone stay where you are." Their voices cut through the thick haze of laughter and confusion inside, replacing it with a thick, crackling tension that was almost delicious to listen to from where I stood. I stayed outside, leaning casually against my car as the living room lights blazed. Through the wide front window, I could see my family, my so-called family, freeze like a bunch of guilty kids caught stealing from a cookie jar. Except this time, it wasn't cookies they'd taken. It was thousands of dollars, my future, my security, my trust. The second officer, a woman with a no-nonsense posture, began rattling off questions. "Who lives at this residence? We have reports of unauthorized access to a personal bank account traced to this location." Uncle Rick puffed up like a balloon about to pop. "There must be some mistake. We're good people. Family gathering, that's all." The officer didn't even blink. Good people don't transfer savings out of someone else's account. Then she added, almost conversationally, especially not using IP addresses registered to this address. I almost laughed out loud at the way Aunt Carol's face twisted at that. She clutched her pearls, literally clutched them like some bad soap opera villain, while Jess and Travis exchanged frantic looks that screamed we're so screwed. One of the officers pulled out a tablet and scrolled through it, his expression unreadable. We have transaction records, device signatures, login timestamps, enough for multiple counts of wire fraud. Travis, brilliant, wonderful Travis, had the nerve to actually roll his eyes. Come on, it was just a joke. It's not like he needed it. The room fell deathly silent. Even the TV had been muted, the forgotten football game a ghostly background on the screen. You accessed someone else's financial accounts without permission, and you stole funds, the officer said, voice sharp now. That's not a prank. That's a felony. The gravity of the situation finally seemed to hit Jess first. She started crying immediately, loud gulping sobs that were more about fear for herself than any regret. Aunt Carol tried to jump in, waving her arms and shrieking about misunderstandings and family loyalty. Uncle Rick kept muttering something about talking it out and no need for drama. I stayed where I was, letting it all unfold without stepping in to save them. Not this time. I owed them nothing. Then one of the officers said, "We need to speak with the victim. Is Adam still here?" I raised a hand lazily from beside my car. "Right here, officer." Both officers turned to me with nods. Their faces softened just a fraction when they saw me, and the younger one motioned me over. "You the account holder?" he asked. "Yes, sir. Adam Mitchell. You've been cooperative so far, and based on the evidence you submitted, you have grounds to press full charges." I nodded slowly, deliberately. I could feel every pair of eyes from inside the house drilling into me, practically begging me not to. Aunt Carol even took a few staggering steps toward the door, her hands pressed together like she was about to start praying. "Adam, honey," she said in a trembling voice, "you don't want to do this. We're family." Something inside me snapped, but not in anger this time. In clarity. I stepped closer to the porch so they could all hear me, see me. "You stole from me," I said, my voice low but steady. "You laughed about it. You made me feel like garbage, again. This time, I'm not sweeping it under the rug so you can pretend it never happened." I turned to the officers. "Yes, I want to press charges." The silence that followed was thicker than gravy, thicker than the lump in Aunt Carol's throat as she stared at me, realizing that for the first time, their manipulation wasn't going to work. They couldn't guilt-trip their way out of this. "All right," the officer said briskly, pulling out cuffs. "Travis Mitchell, Jessica Mitchell, Rick Spencer, you're under arrest for unauthorized access and theft. You have the right to remain silent." The reading of their rights faded into a background hum as I watched the scene unfold like a slow-motion car crash. Travis cursed under his breath, but the officers ignored him. Just tried to cling to Aunt Carol, sobbing hysterically as they cuffed her. Uncle Rick looked pale and shaken, like he might faint. Aunt Carol made one last desperate lunge toward me, stopping just short of grabbing my arm. "Please, Adam," she begged. "We were just struggling. Rick's gambling. Jess's debts. We thought you could spare it." I stared at her for a long moment, weighing everything she had ever said and done to me. The constant belittling. The fake smiles. The way they never once offered me help or support when I needed it most. "You should have asked," I said coldly. "But you never did you? You just took." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, but no words came out. I turned away from her, refusing to let her see even a flicker of emotion cross my face. As they were led one by one into the squad cars, the neighborhood began to stir. Curtains twitched. Front porch lights flickered on. Curious whispers floated through the chilly night air. Let them see, I thought. Let them all see what happens when you treat someone like dirt and expect them to stay silent forever. I sat in my car after the officers left, engine off, just breathing. For the first time in years, maybe longer, I felt something crack open inside me, not sadness, not anger. Relief. Freedom. But that wasn't even the end of it. Because the real consequences hadn't even started yet. And trust me, they were about to lose a whole lot more than just a Thanksgiving dinner. The squad cars disappeared down the street, their red and blue lights fading into the night like the closing scene of a movie. For a long time, I just sat there in the driver's seat, letting the silence wrap around me like a blanket. My fingers were still trembling, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was something sharper. Anticipation. Because while they thought this nightmare ended with a few arrests and a slap on the wrist, they had no idea how deep the hole they just dug really was. See, when I agreed to help beta test that financial security program last year, part of the deal wasn't just tracking fraud, it was also mandatory reporting. That meant the case didn't just stay local. It got flagged. Flagged to their banks. Flagged to credit reporting agencies. Flagged to every institution that cared about words like embezzlement and fraudulent activity. And these weren't exactly small charges. Between the dollar amount stolen and the digital paper trail they left like a bunch of drunk elephants, it wasn't just a slap on the wrist they were facing. It was federal. As I pulled out of the driveway, I caught a glimpse of Aunt Carol's front window. Her silhouette stood there, frozen, watching me leave. Maybe she thought she could fix this. Maybe she thought she'd talk to a few people, guilt trip a few more, and smooth it all over like she always had. She was wrong. I drove home on autopilot, my mind buzzing with everything that had just happened and what was about to. I barely slept that night, even though I should have felt triumphant. The truth is, part of me still mourned what I thought family was supposed to be. That small, foolish part clung to memories of Christmas mornings and birthday parties and summers spent running through sprinklers with my cousins, back before money poisoned everything. But when the sun rose and my phone started lighting up, that feeling died for good. First came the calls. Unknown numbers. Private numbers. Voicemails that swung wildly between begging and threatening. Adam, it's your Aunt Carol. Please call me back. We can fix this. It's not too late. Adam, this is Rick. You better think twice about what you're doing. Family's supposed to stick together. Adam, it's Jess. I'm sorry, okay? I'm really sorry. Can you just tell the police it was a misunderstanding? Please? Please. I let them all go to voicemail. I wasn't interested in playing therapist for the people who thought my life savings were some kind of tip jar. Then came the real fallout. Within 48 hours, their bank accounts were frozen under investigation. Aunt Carol's mortgage lender got spooked when the fraud charges popped up and flagged her loan for reassessment. Uncle Rick's employer, he worked at a mid-sized construction firm, got wind of his arrest and strongly encouraged him to resign. Jess, who was supposed to start a new job the following Monday, found her offer rescinded when her background check turned up pending felony charges. And Travis? Oh, Travis got it the worst. Turns out, he had been bragging online for months about hustling money from stupid relatives on shady forums. Screenshots surfaced. Chat logs were submitted as additional evidence. The financial security company I worked with even offered to pursue civil charges on top of the criminal ones for damages, legal fees, and restitution. Their little bonus turned into a 5-figure debt almost overnight. Meanwhile, I moved on with my life. Quieter. Smarter. I opened new accounts. Switched banks. Upgraded my home security system. It wasn't paranoia. It was learning the hard way that sometimes the people you think you can trust will hurt you worse than any stranger ever could. Still, the story wasn't done. About a week after Thanksgiving, when the cold had truly settled into the bones of the town and Christmas lights twinkled like tiny lies on every porch, I got a letter in the mail. No stamp. No return address. Just shoved through the mail slot like a dirty secret someone didn't want traced back to them. Inside was a handwritten note on cheap, lined notebook paper. You ruined us. I hope you're happy. We're your family. You'll regret this. We always come back for our own. No signature. Just that. For a long time, I stood there in the front hallway, turning the paper over in my hands. It would have been funny if it wasn't so sad. Even after everything, they still thought they were the victims. I didn't call the police. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because by then, the gears were already turning on something they couldn't stop. Remember how Aunt Carol had inherited Grandpa Mitchell's house years ago? The big family estate everyone used to gather at before things turned toxic? What nobody knew was that the inheritance had a catch. If the heir faced felony charges before the mortgage was paid off, the property reverted back to a charitable trust Grandpa had quietly set up. Guess who filed to enforce the trust conditions the second the felony charges stuck? I didn't even need to lift a finger. The bank handled it. The lawyers handled it. The sheriff's office posted the notice on her door in the middle of December, right under the sad, drooping wreath she had probably put up without realizing how ironic it would look. Foreclosure. Property seizure. Auction. Everything they had built their fake little empire on gone. Word got around town fast. People who had once pretended not to notice their nasty behavior suddenly had plenty to say. Aunt Carol, who once swan through church like she owned it, now ducked her head and hurried past pews. Uncle Rick slunk around the grocery store like a man waiting to be recognized and humiliated. Just moved 2 towns over, trying to escape the whispers. And Travis? Last I heard, he was still awaiting sentencing, facing the real possibility of prison time. I never responded to that letter. I didn't need to. My life got lighter, brighter, once I cut the rot away. Sometimes, I still pass by Aunt Carol's old house, now stripped of holiday lights and filled with empty echoes. Up for sale by auction sign creaks in the wind, the lawn overgrown and scraggly. I slow down just enough to take it all in. Not because I'm bitter, not because I'm vengeful, but because some lessons need to be remembered. The final nail in the coffin came 2 months later, right after the new year. The auction happened on a bitter, gray January morning. I didn't plan to go at first. I figured it would be better to move on, to let it all die quietly. But some part of me, the part that still carried every cold shoulder, every mocking laugh, every moment they made me feel small, needed to see it through. When I pulled up across the street from the house, the sight almost didn't look real. There was a small crowd gathered on the frostbitten lawn, hands stuffed into pockets, stomping their feet against the cold. An auctioneer in a heavy coat stood on the porch with a clipboard, calling out numbers like he was selling old furniture. And there they were, huddled on the curb in cheap jackets, faces red from the cold and the humiliation. Aunt Carol, Uncle Rick, Jess, even Travis, out on bail, looking 100 years older than he had at Thanksgiving. They weren't allowed inside anymore. They had no legal claim to anything. I watched as the final bid was called, way lower than the house's actual worth, and the gavel slammed down on the porch railing. Just like that, the last piece of the life they had stolen, manipulated, and built on selfishness was gone. They didn't even notice me sitting in my car until it was over. Aunt Carol's eyes caught mine across the street, and for a second, she just stared. No words. No theatrics. Just a woman who had finally realized that there was no apology, no guilt trip, no desperate grab that could undo the mess she had made. I gave her a small nod. Not cruel, not gloating, just final. And then I drove away, without looking back. No more voicemails. No more letters. No more ghostly reminders of people who only knew how to take. They faded out of my life like smoke, and I let them. I rebuilt quietly. It wasn't overnight. Trust takes time, even trust in yourself, but it was mine. I moved to a new apartment across town, started a new job that I loved, and surrounded myself with friends who didn't see me as a walking wallet but as someone worth caring about. Every Thanksgiving after that, I made my own traditions. Dinner with real friends, the ones who showed up without expectation. The ones who passed me the mashed potatoes because they wanted to, not because they needed something from me. And every year, as I carved the turkey and heard the laughter around the table, I felt nothing but peace. No anger, no sadness, no regret. Just the quiet, solid knowledge that walking away and letting them fall by their own hands was the best thing I ever did. Because sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't getting even. It's getting free. And I finally, truly was.